Welcome to Tales by Imon, where the line between technology and terror becomes blurred. Tonight, we begin a story that explores a single, terrifying question. If you could find out the exact moment of your death, would you want to know? Settle in, and let's begin. The glow of the monitor was the only light in Liam's small cubicle, painting his face in shades of blue and white. Data streams scrolled across his screen, a waterfall of numbers and code that he navigated with the practiced ease of a seasoned sailor. Liam wasn't a sailor, though. He was a data analyst for a mid-level insurance firm in Chicago. His world was one of patterns, probabilities, and predictable outcomes. He found comfort in the certainty of numbers, in the way they could tell a story without emotion or bias. His life, much like his work, was a carefully curated collection of routines. The same oat milk latte every morning, the same train at 7:45 a.m., the same pre-packaged salad for lunch. It was a stable, predictable existence, and he liked it that way. The sudden buzz of his phone on the desk was a minor disruption, an unplanned variable. He glanced at the screen. It was a message from his friend, Josh. Where Liam was a creature of habit, Josh was a whirlwind of chaos and enthusiasm, always chasing the next big thing in the tech world. The message contained nothing but a single, cryptic link. Below it, a short text bubbled up. "Dude, you have to see this. It's insane. Don't ask questions, just install it." Liam sighed, a small puff of air that barely disturbed the quiet hum of the office. He typed back a reply. "Josh, I'm at work. What is it? Another crypto scheme or a social media platform for pet influencers?" The reply was almost instantaneous. A string of laughing emojis followed by, "Nothing like that. This is different. It's profound. It's called Chrono." Chrono. The name sounded sleek, modern, and vaguely ominous. Liam's curiosity, a muscle he rarely exercised, gave a faint twitch. He minimized his work spreadsheet and cautiously clicked the link on his desktop. The page that loaded was starkly minimalist. A glossy black background, a single silver logo that looked like a broken hourglass, and a few words in elegant white font. Chrono. Know your Ian. By invitation only. Below it was a button that simply said, "Accept." Against his better judgment, he messaged Josh again. "What does it do?" The three little dots indicating Josh was typing seemed to hang on the screen for an eternity. Finally, the message came through. "It tells you when you're going to die." Liam stared at the words. He read them once, then twice. A cold laugh escaped his lips, quiet enough not to disturb his co-workers. It had to be a joke. A morbid, elaborate prank. "Very funny," he typed back. "Is this one of those apps that just generates a random date to scare you? Oldest trick in the book." "No, man. This isn't a toy," Josh's reply was serious, stripped of his usual hyperbole. "I don't know how it works. Nobody does. The rumor is it scrapes everything. And I mean everything. Your public records, social media, health data from your smartwatch, financial transactions, GPS history. It even uses satellite imagery and predictive algorithms to analyze your patterns. It builds a complete, holistic model of your life and calculates your endpoint with terrifying accuracy." Liam's skepticism was a solid wall, but Josh's words were like a chisel, chipping away at the edges. As a data analyst, he understood the power of information. He knew that the digital breadcrumbs a person leaves behind could paint an incredibly detailed picture of their life. But to predict a death? That was the realm of science fiction. It was impossible. "That's insane, Josh. And probably illegal on a dozen different levels," Liam responded. "Probably. But everyone in the beta is talking. A guy in a tech forum I'm on. His chrono date was for last Tuesday. He laughed it off. He was killed in a freak traffic accident on his way home from work. Tuesday afternoon." A chill, entirely unrelated to the office air conditioning, crept up Liam's spine. He tried to rationalize it. It was a coincidence. A made-up story to make the app seem more legitimate. Josh was always falling for this kind of viral marketing. He closed the link and tried to return to his spreadsheet, but the numbers seemed to swim before his eyes. The clean, predictable patterns now felt meaningless. The word chrono echoed in his mind. "Know your Ian." The phrase was both poetic and horrifying. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. The commute home on the rattling train car felt different. Liam found himself looking at the faces of the people around him, the tired commuters staring at their phones or out the window. He wondered what their dates would be. The thought was intrusive, unwelcome. He felt like he was becoming complicit in some dark secret just by knowing about the app. Back in the sterile quiet of his apartment, he made dinner, a process that was usually a comforting ritual. Tonight, it felt hollow. He ate without tasting, his mind replaying the conversation with Josh. He turned on the TV, but the noise was just a distraction. The pull of the unopened link was like a physical weight in his mind. He knew it was foolish. He knew it was most likely a scam or a very sophisticated prank. As a man who dealt in facts and figures, he should be the first to dismiss it. But the 1% chance, the terrifying, nagging, what if, refused to be silenced. What if it was real? Knowledge was power, wasn't it? Knowing would mean he could prepare, could fix things, could live his remaining time to the fullest. Or would it be a curse, a ticking clock in the back of his mind that would rob every future moment of its joy? Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He walked over to his laptop, the soft glow of the screen illuminating his conflicted face. He opened his message history and clicked the link one more time. The black screen with the silver hourglass greeted him like an old, unwelcome friend. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was stupid. He was being stupid. He reached for the trackpad to close the window, to banish this insanity from his mind. But his hand froze. With a deep breath that did little to calm his racing pulse, he moved the cursor over the button that read, Accept. He clicked it. The website redirected to an app download page. The installation was quick, almost disturbingly so. A new icon appeared on his phone's screen, the broken hourglass. He tapped it. The app opened. There were no flashy graphics, no lengthy terms of service. Just a black screen and a simple instruction. Place your thumb on the scanner to confirm your identity and consent to the calculation. This was the final step. The point of no return. Liam's thumb hovered over the phone's fingerprint scanner. He thought about his predictable, stable life. His oat milk lattes, his spreadsheets, his quiet evenings. He was about to invite utter chaos into that world. He could still stop. He could delete the app and pretend this never happened. But he couldn't. The pull of the unknown was too strong. With a shuddering exhale, he pressed his thumb against the cool glass. The screen lit up, recognizing his print. A loading bar appeared, a thin silver line filling slowly from left to right. Below it, words flickered in rapid succession, too fast to read but he caught glimpses, analyzing genetic markers, cross-referencing social data, calculating environmental risk factors, projecting trajectory. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably only 10 seconds. The bar reached the end. The screen went black for a moment. Liam held his breath, his knuckles white as he gripped the phone. Then, the final result appeared on the screen. It wasn't a countdown timer. It wasn't a vague prophecy. It was just simple, cold, and absolute. 2 lines of stark white text against the black void. October 28th, 2025. 11:47 p.m. Liam stared at the date. He checked the current date on his laptop. It was October 4th, 2025. The date on the screen was just over 3 weeks away. A cold dread, heavier and more real than anything he had ever felt, settled in his stomach, a block of ice that seemed to freeze him from the inside out. This wasn't a joke. This felt real. And according to the app on his phone, his predictable, orderly life had an expiration date. And it was coming very, very soon. The numbers on the screen didn't waver. October 28th, 2025. 11:47 p.m. They glowed with an indifferent finality, a digital tombstone. Liam's first reaction wasn't panic, but a profound, hollow numbness. His apartment, usually a sanctuary of order, suddenly felt like a cage. The air grew thin, the familiar hum of his refrigerator loud and abrasive. He sank into his desk chair, the phone still clutched in his hand, its screen casting long shadows across the room. This had to be a bug, a glitch, a brutally effective, psychologically damaging prank. That was the only logical explanation. His mind, trained to find errors in systems, scrambled for a foothold. Maybe the app pulled from a faulty public record. Maybe it confused him with someone else with a similar name. Maybe Josh was in on it, orchestrating the whole thing for some twisted laugh. He force quit the app. Then, his thumb hovering with a tremor he couldn't control, he deleted it. The hourglass icon vanished from his screen. For a fleeting second, he felt a wave of relief. It was gone. A stupid piece of code, erased. He took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to force his heartbeat back into a normal rhythm. But the relief was short-lived, replaced by a gnawing, insidious doubt. What if deleting it did nothing? The calculation had been made. The knowledge was in his head, a poison that had already entered his bloodstream. Driven by a desperate need for confirmation that it was all fake, he navigated back to the App Store and re-downloaded Chrono. The installation was just as swift. He opened it. Again, the black screen, the request for his thumbprint. He pressed it to the glass. The silver bar filled, the same phantom words flashing by. And then, the result. October 28th, 2025. 11:47 p.m. Unchanged. Immutable. A wave of nausea washed over him. The app wasn't generating a random date. It had his data, his identity, and it was giving him the same unwavering answer. The logical part of his brain was at war with a primal fear he'd never experienced before. He needed to call Josh. His fingers felt clumsy as he found the contact and hit dial. It rang twice before Josh picked up, his voice cheerful and oblivious. Liam, so, did you check it out? Wild, right? Wild. Liam's voice was a ragged whisper. Josh, what did you get me into? The cheerfulness in Josh's voice vanished, replaced by concern. Whoa man, you okay? You sound terrible. What did it say? You got like 80 years, right? No, Josh, Liam said, his voice cracking. Not 80 years. I got 3 weeks. 3 weeks and 2 days, to be exact. There was dead silence on the other end of the line. Liam could hear Josh's faint breathing. Wait, you're serious? 3 weeks. That's not possible. It must be a mistake. The app is still in beta. Maybe it's buggy. I deleted it and reinstalled it. The date is the same, Josh. Down to the minute, Liam said, pacing his small living room. This isn't a game. What was your date, Josh? What did you get? Josh hesitated. Liam, maybe we shouldn't. Tell me, Liam demanded, his voice rising. A heavy sigh came through the phone. Okay, mine is June 12th, 2088. I'll be 92. The words hit Liam like a physical blow. 92. Josh had a lifetime. A full, long life stretching out before him into a distant, unimaginable future. While Liam had a deadline. The disparity made his own situation feel infinitely more real, more targeted. He wasn't just a random victim of a faulty app. He was an outlier. An anomaly. There are forums online, Josh said softly, as if trying to help. Subreddits, private message boards. People in the beta are talking. Some are freaking out, some are calling it a hoax. Others are trying to figure it out. Trying to beat it. Beat it? Liam laughed, a harsh, broken sound. How do you beat an algorithm that knows everything about you? I don't know, man. Look, I'm sorry. I never thought. I thought it was just a novelty, you know? A novelty, Liam repeated numbly, staring out his window at the indifferent city lights. Yeah, some novelty. He hung up without saying goodbye. He was alone with this. Josh couldn't help him. No one could. He spent the next hour falling down the rabbit hole of the chrono forums Josh had mentioned. The pages were a chaotic mix of terror, gallows humor, and frantic speculation. People posted screenshots of their dates, some decades away, a few alarmingly close. They called themselves the Dated. He read stories that made his blood run cold. A user who had a date for the next day posted a cheerful, "See you on the other side, guys." He never posted again. His profile went silent. Another user, a woman with a date 6 months away, chronicled her attempts to change her fate. She sold her house, quit her job, and moved to a remote cabin in Montana to live off the grid. For a week, her posts were hopeful. Then, silence. The community assumed the worst. But it was the technical threads that truly captured Liam's attention. Data scientists, programmers, and statisticians like himself were trying to reverse engineer the app's logic. They theorized that Chrono didn't just see the past, it ran millions of simulations of your future based on your current trajectory. Every choice you made, from taking a different route to work to what you ate for breakfast, subtly altered the probability cloud of your future. The date on the screen was simply the most probable endpoint. The most probable. Not the only one. A flicker of something, not hope, but a grim, analytical determination, ignited within him. He was a data analyst. He deconstructed complex systems for a living. This app, this algorithm, was just another system. A terrifying one, yes, but it was still built on logic. And logic could be tested. It could be manipulated. He had to change the variables. He had to introduce a massive, unpredictable event into his life, something so far outside his normal routine that the algorithm would be forced to recalculate. His routines were his comfort zone, but now they were a cage, guiding him down a pre-calculated path to October 28th. He had to break the pattern. His eyes fell on his laptop, still open to a travel website he'd been looking at for a fantasy vacation weeks ago. An idea, reckless and desperate, formed in his mind. He couldn't just take a different route to work. He had to disappear from the system's projected path entirely. With frantic energy, he clicked through the website. He didn't search for a tropical paradise or a bustling European city. He searched for the most random, out-of-the-way place he could think of. A small town in coastal Oregon. A place with no connection to his life, his work, or his data profile. He found a flight leaving the next morning. A one-way ticket. He entered his payment information, his hand shaking so badly he had to type the numbers twice. The confirmation screen popped up. It was done. For the first time since seeing the date, he felt a sliver of power. It was a rash, insane decision that would probably get him fired, but he didn't care. He was fighting back. He was introducing chaos into the pristine dataset of his life. His heart thudding, he picked up his phone and opened Chrono one more time. He needed to see if it had worked. If his grand, defiant gesture had made any difference. The app loaded. He stared at the screen, his breath catching in his throat. The date was still there. October 28th, 2025. A wave of despair crashed over him. It hadn't worked. He was still on the same path. But then, as he stared, something happened. The numbers below the date, the time, flickered. For a split second, they blurred, then resolved into a new configuration. 11:42 p.m. It had changed. Not the day but the time. His action, his defiance, had been registered by the system. The algorithm had recalculated. He had successfully altered the prediction. But the cold, terrifying realization hit him a second later. He hadn't bought himself more time. He hadn't pushed his death further away. He had just made it come 5 minutes sooner. 5 minutes. He had traded a cross-country flight, his job, his entire life, for 5 fewer minutes of existence. The absurdity of it was so profound that Liam almost laughed. It was the kind of laugh that catches in your throat and turns into a sob. He sat in the dark of his apartment, the flight confirmation email glowing on one screen and the slightly adjusted death clock glowing on the other. He hadn't escaped the calculation. He had become a more efficiently processed data point on the path to his own demise. The algorithm wasn't just predicting his future, it was reacting to his attempts to change it in real time. Sleep was a forgotten luxury. The night passed in a haze of caffeine and anxiety. Every shadow in his apartment seemed to lengthen, every creak of the building a countdown. By the time the first gray light of dawn broke over the Chicago skyline on Sunday, October 5th, Liam was already packed. One suitcase. He'd thrown in clothes at random, his laptop, and a burner phone he'd bought for cash 2 years ago and never used. He was a ghost leaving behind the shell of a life. Before he left, he performed the final rites for his old self. He drafted a short professional email to his boss, citing a sudden family emergency that required his immediate and indefinite departure. It was a lie, but it was cleaner than the truth. Then, he sent a text to Josh. "I'm going off-grid. Don't try to find me. Don't know if this will work, but I have to try. Be well." He shut down his personal phone and removed the SIM card, dropping it into a glass of water on the kitchen counter. It was a small, symbolic act of defiance. The journey to O'Hare Airport was a paranoid ordeal. The city he had known his whole life suddenly felt alien and menacing. Every face in the crowd on the train was a potential variable in the equation of his death. The taxi driver who took him the last few miles had a news station on the radio, reporting on a multi-car pileup on the interstate. Liam flinched, his heart pounding. Was that how it was supposed to happen? Was every news report of a tragedy a preview of his own end? The airport was worse. It was a cathedral of data collection. Cameras followed his every move. His face was scanned, his ticket cross-referenced, his luggage x-rayed. He was willingly feeding himself into the very type of information-gathering network that Chrono likely used as its lifeblood. He felt like a mouse asking a cat for passage. He half expected an alarm to go off, a security guard to stop him and say, "Sorry, Mr. Hudson, your projected timeline doesn't include this flight." He bought a coffee he didn't drink and sat at the gate, obsessively checking Chrono on his laptop, tethered to the airport's public Wi-Fi. The time remained fixed, 11:42 p.m. No further changes. His desperate act of booking the flight had been absorbed into the model. His path was set. He was no longer a resident of Chicago with a stable job. He was now a man on a one-way ticket to Portland, Oregon, with a death date of October 28th, 11:42 p.m. On the plane, suspended 30,000 feet above the country, the reality of his situation truly sank in. He was a fugitive, but his pursuer wasn't a person or an organization. His pursuer was a statistical probability. It was everywhere and nowhere. He looked at the other passengers, a family laughing, a businessman typing furiously on a laptop, a student listening to music. He wondered if they knew about Chrono. What were their dates? Did the woman with the kind smile have 60 years left? Did the young man have 60 hours? The knowledge felt like a form of madness, separating him from the rest of humanity. He must have drifted into a state of exhausted half-sleep, because the next thing he knew, the captain was announcing their initial descent into Portland. The change in scenery was jarring. The flat, sprawling grid of the Midwest was replaced by dense evergreen forests and the hazy outline of distant mountains. The air that greeted him as he stepped out of the terminal was cool and damp, smelling of pine and rain. It was the air of a different world. He rented the cheapest car he could find, paying with a credit card he knew he would cancel within the hour. He needed to get to his destination, the small, coastal town of Seacliff, a place he'd picked from a map for its sheer obscurity. The drive took him out of the city and onto a winding highway that hugged the coastline. The vast, gray expanse of the Pacific Ocean stretched out to his right, mesmerizing and intimidating. For the first time in 24 hours, a tiny piece of the tension in his shoulders began to ease. Out here, surrounded by natural, untamed beauty, the digital menace of Chrono felt a little less real. Here, his routines were meaningless. The algorithm had no data on him in this context. Maybe this could work. Maybe he could just disappear. He pulled over at a scenic viewpoint to stretch his legs. Leaning against the guardrail, with the wind whipping at his jacket and the sound of crashing waves below, he felt a sliver of hope. He took out his laptop, powering it on with the car's adapter. He wanted to check the forums one last time before he arrived in Seacliff and tried to disconnect completely. He navigated to the subreddit for the dated. He scrolled past the familiar posts of panic and despair. Then a thread title caught his eye. It was posted only a few hours ago. It wasn't the usual frantic speculation. It read like a research paper. Pattern identified, geographic clustering in recent short-term predictions. He clicked on it. The post was from a user with a data-centric name, Probable Cause. They claimed to have been scraping and analyzing the self-reported death dates and locations from the forum. I've noticed a statistically significant anomaly, the post read. Over the past 72 hours, at least a dozen users with newly assigned short-term dates, under 30 days, have reported that their predicted place of death, when cross-referenced with their known travel plans, is converging on a single, low-population area. The location is a coastal town in Tillamook County, Oregon. Liam's blood ran cold. He kept reading, his heart beginning to hammer against his ribs again. The algorithm seems to be subtly influencing user decisions, suggesting travel destinations through targeted ads, manipulating search results, or exploiting psychological profiles to make a certain location seem like a logical, safe, or even random choice for a person in crisis. We think we're running, but we might just be getting herded. At the bottom of the post was a list of the converging locations. There were several small towns and unincorporated areas listed. And near the top of that list, in stark, undeniable text, was the name of the town he had chosen at random. The town he was just 10 miles away from. Seacliff. He stared at the screen, the sound of the ocean fading into a dull roar in his ears. It wasn't a coincidence. His desperate, spontaneous decision to flee to the most random place he could imagine wasn't his own idea at all. He hadn't broken the pattern. He had followed it perfectly. He hadn't run from the system. He was being drawn toward the center of its web. And he was almost there. The wind whipped off the Pacific, cold and sharp, but Liam didn't feel it. He felt an internal chill that was far more profound, a frost spreading through his veins as he stared at the laptop screen. Seacliff. The name echoed in his mind, no longer a random point on a map, but the designation for a trap. He had been herded. The illusion of free will, of a desperate, defiant escape, shattered into a million pieces. He was a sheep who, thinking he was fleeing the wolf, had run directly into the slaughterhouse. His first instinct was raw, animalistic terror. He should get back in the car, drive as fast and as far as he could, throw his laptop into the ocean, and disappear into the anonymity of the American wilderness. But that instinct was immediately crushed by a cold, hard wave of logic. The post from Probable Cause had made one thing terrifyingly clear: running was part of the system's design. Fleeing would be playing by its rules, following a script that had been written for him by an algorithm. Every panic turn he made would likely already be a node in its predictive model, each one leading him closer to that final, unchangeable time, 11:42 p.m. A new feeling began to crystallize beneath the fear: anger. a cold, quiet fury. He was a data analyst. He understood systems. He had been manipulated by one. His own professional expertise turned against him. They had used his psychological profile, his desire for order, his analytical mind, his predictable fear, to guide him here. To run now was to concede defeat. To drive into Seacliff, however, felt like flipping over the chessboard. If this was where the game was being played, then he needed to be on the board, not fleeing the table. With a grim resolve he didn't know he possessed, Liam shut the laptop, got back in the car, and turned the key. He didn't turn back toward Portland. He drove south, toward the town that was waiting for him. The welcome sign for Seacliff was weathered and peeling, the painted seagull faded by years of salt and sun. The town itself was nestled in a small cove, a collection of tired-looking buildings huddled against the relentless ocean wind. It had the faded charm of a place that time had largely forgotten. A single main street featured a diner with a flickering neon sign, a small grocery store, a bait and tackle shop, and a handful of other storefronts, most of them dark. A thick fog was beginning to roll in from the sea, muffling sound and shrouding the town in a ghostly gray blanket. It felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage, waiting for the final act. He found the only motel in town, the Tides Inn, a low, one-story building with a buzzing vacancy sign. The man at the front desk was old and gaunt, with eyes that seemed to look right through him. He paid cash for a week, signing the guest register with a fake name he invented on the spot. He didn't know if it would make a difference, but he felt a desperate need to create some static in his data trail. The room was damp and smelled of mildew and old secrets. The first thing Liam did was lock the door, wedge a chair under the handle, and draw the thin, faded curtains. This shabby, anonymous room was now his base of operations. He set up his laptop on the rickety desk. He was no longer just a man running from his death date. He was an investigator. His subject, the Seacliff anomaly. His deadline was October 28th. His first logical step was to contact the source. He opened the forum and composed a direct message to probable cause. He kept it brief and encrypted, using a simple cipher he hoped another data-minded person would appreciate. Geographic clustering. You are correct. I am a data analyst from Chicago. My date is October 28th. Chrono guided me to Seacliff, or my impulsive decision to flee here was anything but. I am now in town. I believe we are being gathered. Why? Need to share intel. He hit send. Now, all he could do was wait. But sitting in this musty room, waiting for a digital ghost to reply while his own clock ticked down, was unbearable. He needed to be proactive. He needed to observe the environment. He needed to see if he could find any of the other dozen users mentioned in the post. He left the motel and walked down the nearly empty main street toward the only sign of life, the diner. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, announcing his presence to the handful of patrons inside. A couple of fishermen in worn-out flannels sat at the counter, talking in low murmurs. A family of 4 sat in a booth near the window. They all looked like locals. They all looked like they belonged. Liam, in his city clothes and with a haunted look in his eyes, stood out like a sore thumb. He slid into a booth in the back corner, one that gave him a clear view of the entire room. A waitress came over and he ordered a black coffee, his hands wrapped around the warm mug for comfort. He scanned the room, looking for anyone who seemed out of place, anyone with the same frantic, hunted energy that he felt coursing through his own veins. He saw no one. He was about to write it off as a lost cause when the bell chimed again. A woman walked in. She wasn't a local. Her clothes were too new, her posture too tense. She had dark circles under her eyes, and she moved with a nervous, bird-like energy, her gaze constantly flitting around the room. She sat alone at the counter, avoiding eye contact with everyone. She pulled out her phone. Liam watched her. She wasn't scrolling through social media or texting a friend. Her thumb moved in a repetitive, obsessive pattern across the screen, a nervous tick. It was the gesture of someone constantly checking something. Refreshing a page that never changed. He knew that gesture intimately. It was the way he had been checking chrono for the last 24 hours. His heart began to beat faster. Was she one of them? Another member of the dated who had been herded to this foggy, forgotten town? Their eyes met for a fraction of a second across the room. He saw a flicker of recognition in her gaze, a shared understanding of a terror that needed no words. It was a look that said, I see you. You're one too. Just as quickly, she broke contact, her face hardening. She threw a few dollars on the counter, stood up abruptly, and walked out of the diner, disappearing into the fog. Liam felt a surge of disappointment. His first potential lead was gone. He was about to get up and leave himself when he noticed something on the counter where she had been sitting. She had left her napkin behind. He waited a moment, then walked over to the counter. He casually picked up the napkin as if to wipe his hands. It wasn't empty. Drawn in the center, in black ink, was a simple, stark symbol. An hourglass, broken in the middle. The logo for the Chrono app. But there was something else. Below the hourglass, an arrow was drawn. It was pointing to a specific booth in the diner. The booth in the far back corner. The one where he was currently sitting. She hadn't just been looking at him. She had been leaving him a message. He wasn't just another victim. He was being invited to join the game. Liam's mind raced as he stared at the napkin in his hand. The broken hourglass was a sign, a confirmation. But the arrow pointing to his own booth felt like a riddle. It wasn't just a message, it was a test. Had she known which booth he would choose? Or was the message for anyone who sat there? He dismissed the thought. The eye contact they'd shared was too specific. She was communicating with him. He slid back into the vinyl seat, his outward demeanor calm while his thoughts operated at a frantic pace. He ran his fingers along the edges of the wooden table, then underneath it. Nothing. He felt along the cracked-up upholstery of the seat. His fingers brushed against a small tear in the vinyl, hidden in the seam where the backrest met the seat. It felt deliberate. He pushed his fingers inside, feeling the rough foam padding and then, paper. A small, tightly folded square. His heart hammered against his ribs. With his back to the rest of the diner, he carefully worked the note out of the tear. He shielded it with his hand and unfolded it on his lap. The handwriting was a hurried, sharp script, written in the same black ink as the drawing on the napkin. The message was chillingly simple. They are watching. If you want answers, be at the Old Fish Cannery. Midnight. Come alone. The Old Fish Cannery. Liam had seen it on his way into town, a massive skeletal structure looming on the waterfront, its windows like vacant eyes. It was the perfect, cliché setting for an ambush. This could easily be a trap. The woman could be working for whoever created Chrono, helping to round up the strays who were smart enough to figure out they were being herded. But what choice did he have? Sit in his motel room and wait for the calendar pages to turn? Or walk into the potential trap that held the only promise of answers? He crumpled the note and the napkin in his fist and left the diner, leaving his barely touched coffee behind. Back in the suffocating quiet of his motel room, the hours leading up to midnight stretched into an eternity. Every creak of the building, every passing car, sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He was a bundle of raw nerves, caught between the hope of discovery and the fear of the unknown. To distract himself, he opened his laptop and checked his messages on the encrypted forum. A new one was waiting for him. It was a reply from Probable Cause. Hudson, your cipher is rudimentary, but it shows you're cautious. Good. You'll need to be. My name is Evelyn. I'm a systems analyst, formerly with a major cybersecurity firm. Like you, I received a short-term date. Like you, I was guided here. My date is October 26th. October 26th. 2 days before his own. Liam felt a strange kinship with this faceless ally. Evelyn's message continued. You are right. We are being gathered. This isn't just a predictive app, Liam. Chrono is a system of influence. It doesn't just see the path, it subtly paves it. Seacliff is what I believe is an observation zone. A closed environment to test the final stages of the algorithm on a controlled group. The variables are us. Think of it as a stress test. The system wants to see how we react when we know the end is near and our options are limited. Be careful. There are others here, but you don't know their motives. The app may be influencing them in ways we can't understand. Trust your data, not your gut. And trust no one you can't verify. Liam stared at the message. A stress test. The cold, clinical term made his skin crawl. He wasn't a person to the system. He was a variable in an experiment. Evelyn's warning echoed in his mind. Trust no one. And in a few hours, he was scheduled to meet a complete stranger in a dark, abandoned building. As midnight approached, the fog outside thickened into an impenetrable wall of gray, swallowing the weak light from the street lamps. The world outside his window had disappeared. Armed with a small flashlight and Evelyn's warning ringing in his ears, Liam slipped out of his motel room. The air was heavy with the smell of salt and wet decay. The town was utterly silent, save for the distant, mournful cry of a foghorn. His footsteps were unervingly loud on the empty pavement as he made his way toward the waterfront. The Old Fish Cannery loomed out of the fog, larger and more menacing than it had appeared in the daylight. Its corrugated metal walls were streaked with rust, looking like dried blood in the faint moonlight. A section of the chain-link fence surrounding it had been pulled back, creating a narrow opening. The invitation. He took a deep breath, the cold, damp air burning his lungs, and slipped through the fence. He found the door mentioned in his thoughts, a side entrance, its lock long since rusted away. It creaked open into a vast, cavernous darkness. The air inside was thick with the ghosts of old smells, brine, metal, and something else, something organic and ancient. His small flashlight beam cut a nervous path through the gloom, revealing hulking, silent machinery draped in cobwebs, like sleeping iron beasts. Water dripped from the high ceiling, each drop echoing in the immense space. "Hello," he called out, his voice sounding small and thin. It was swallowed by the darkness. He took a few tentative steps forward, his senses on high alert. This was it. The trap was about to be sprung. Then, he heard a sound. A soft shuffle to his left. He whipped his flashlight in that direction, his heart leaping into his throat. A figure stood there, shielded by a large piece of machinery. But before he could react, another sound came from his right. And then another in front of him. He was surrounded. He lowered his flashlight beam to the floor, his mind racing. Then, in the darkness, a faint glow appeared. The unmistakable blue-white light of a smartphone screen. A moment later, another one lit up. And then another. And another. Soon, the vast, dark space was punctuated by a dozen pinpricks of light, held by silent figures emerging from the shadows. They weren't holding weapons. They were holding their phones, their faces illuminated by the ghastly glow of their own ticking clocks. He saw the woman from the diner among them, her face pale and grim. He saw a young man who couldn't be more than 20, his eyes wide with fear. He saw a middle-aged man in a worn-out suit, his expression one of utter defeat. They were all different, yet they all shared the same haunted look he saw in his own reflection. The look of the dated. He wasn't walking into an ambush. He was walking into an assembly. A secret, midnight gathering of the damned. He had found the others. He had reached the heart of the Seacliff anomaly. And as he stood there, surrounded by his fellow variables in this twisted experiment, he realized the true horror wasn't just knowing when he would die, but in knowing he was not alone. The vast, dark cannery was silent for a long moment, the only light coming from the dozen ghost-like faces illuminated by their phones. The sense of isolation Liam had felt for the past 2 days was replaced by something far more complex, a shared, collective dread. He was a single data point that had just found its doomed cluster. A figure detached itself from the shadows. It was the woman from the diner. She stepped into the center of the loose circle, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and fierce determination. "My name is Maya," she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the heavy silence. "I was a journalist in San Francisco. I'm the one who started leaving the signs. I figured if I was being led here, others were too. I see I was right." She looked around the circle, meeting each person's gaze. "We are all strangers. The only thing we have in common is this curse. But being alone hasn't helped any of us. Hiding hasn't helped. Running has only made things worse. Tonight, we stop being isolated variables. Tonight, we start sharing data." A rough, angry voice cut in from the side. "Sharing data? What's the point? We're all just lab rats in their maze." The speaker was a powerfully built man with a scowl etched onto his face. He radiated an aura of frustrated energy. "Maybe," Maya conceded, her gaze unwavering. "But even lab rats can learn the shape of their maze. We need to know who we are. We need to know the parameters of this experiment. I'll start." She held up her phone, the screen showing the stark white numbers. "Maya, from San Francisco. My date is October 27th. She then pointed to the angry man. "You next." He hesitated, then grunted, a sound of pure frustration. "Ben. Phoenix. I'm a construction foreman. Or I was. My date is October 22nd. October 22nd. Just over 2 weeks away." A murmur went through the small crowd. Maya moved to the next person, a young man with wide, terrified eyes, who looked like he'd barely started shaving. "Kevin," he stammered. "I'm a student from Madison. My date is October 24th. One by one, they went around the circle. A retired nurse from Miami, her date October 29th. A married couple from Denver, clinging to each other as they announced their dates were less than 6 hours apart on October 25th. Each new introduction was another nail in the coffin of coincidence. They were from all over the country. Different ages, different professions, different lives. And yet, here they all were, in a derelict fish cannery in the middle of nowhere, their lives set to expire within the same horrifying 2-week window. When it was Liam's turn, his voice was hoarse. "Liam, I'm a data analyst from Chicago. October 28th. He looked at Maya, his analytical mind firing on all cylinders despite the fear. "This is statistically impossible," he said, the words coming out with more force than he intended. For 12 random people from across the US, who downloaded the same beta app, to not only be guided to the same small town but to also have their termination dates fall within a 17-day period of each other, the odds are astronomical. This isn't random. It's a curated group. We've been selected. Selected for what? Kevin, the student, asked, his voice trembling. "To die. We were all going to die anyway," a quiet, raspy voice interjected. It came from an older man leaning against a rusted pillar, his face deeply lined. He had the calm, observant demeanor of an academic. The app just accelerated the paperwork. "The real question is why we were selected to die here." Ben, the foreman, scoffed. "I tried to fight it. When I got my date, I figured I could outsmart a damn phone. I sold my truck for cash, bought survival gear, and drove out into the middle of the Arizona desert. No signal, no GPS, nothing. For 3 days, I was a ghost." He let out a bitter laugh. "I thought I'd done it. But on the third night, a freak sandstorm kicked up. Buried my camp, ruined my supplies. I barely made it back to civilization. And when I checked the app, it had moved my date. 3 days earlier. It was like it was punishing me for trying to get away." Liam nodded grimly. "My story is similar. I booked a flight to get here. My time moved 5 minutes earlier." A collective sigh of recognition went through the group. They had all tried to run. They had all been punished for it. "So we can't run," Maya said, her voice bringing the focus back. "We can't hide. The only move we have left is to understand. Why were we brought here? What is special about Seacliff?" The cannery fell silent again, the enormity of the question hanging in the damp air. They were trapped, not by walls or fences, but by an algorithm that knew their every move before they did. It was the older man, the quiet academic, who spoke up again. "My name is Arthur," he said softly. "I was a history professor at Boston College before I retired. My date is October 30th. When I realized I was being guided here, I did what I've always done. I began to research." Everyone turned to look at him. "Seacliff is a dying town," Arthur continued, his voice taking on a professorial tone. "Its main industries, fishing and logging, dried up decades ago. It's a place with very little economic significance. However, it does have one asset. Up on the cliffs, overlooking the town, is a decommissioned naval listening post from the Cold War. It was abandoned for years. But public records show that 5 years ago, a massive parcel of land, including the listening post and the surrounding cliffs, was bought by a private corporation through a series of shell companies." Liam felt a jolt of electricity. This was it. A tangible lead. "What corporation?" he asked, stepping forward. Arthur looked at Liam, a flicker of something, perhaps scholarly appreciation, in his tired eyes. "They're a data solutions and predictive analytics firm. On paper, they sell server space and data security packages to Fortune 500 companies. They're called AETOS Data Dynamics." AETOS. Liam recognized the name. They were a minor but respected player in the big data world. He'd even read some of their white papers. They were known for their cutting-edge work in machine learning. "AETOS," Arthur said, a grim finality in his voice. "It's the Greek word for eagle. The all-seeing bird of prey that circles high above before it strikes." A heavy, chilling silence descended upon the group. The abstract terror of a malevolent app suddenly had a name and a physical location. Their enemy wasn't just a ghost in the machine anymore. It was a corporation. A corporation with a facility right here, in this town, watching them from the cliffs like an eagle studying the mice in its field. They finally knew the name of the maze builder. The name AETOS Data Dynamics hung in the cold, damp air of the cannery, thick and heavy as the fog outside. For the first time, the faceless, omniscient enemy that had been haunting their lives had a name. The revelation didn't bring relief. It brought a new, more focused kind of terror. A monster is scariest when it is a shapeless shadow. Giving it a name, a form, and a location only makes the threat more real. Ben, the foreman from Phoenix, slammed his fist into a rusted metal barrel, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the cavernous space. "AETOS. So what are we waiting for? Let's go up there. Let's find out what they want. Let's give them a fight." "And do what, Ben?" Maya's voice was sharp, cutting through his anger. Walk up to a high-security facility owned by a multi-million-dollar data corporation and knock on the door? They've been watching us, manipulating us from afar. They know we're here. A direct assault is exactly what a predictive model would expect from a cornered, desperate man. Her words hit their mark. Ben fell silent, his anger deflating into sullen frustration. She was right. They couldn't be predictable. Liam stepped forward, his mind already working, processing the new data. Maya's right. We can't act on impulse. We have to be strategic. We have one advantage they might not have fully accounted for. What's that? Arthur, the professor, asked. Us, Liam said, looking around at the circle of condemned faces. The system sees us as individual variables, each with a predictable psychological profile. It herded us here, but it might not have predicted we would organize. Our strength isn't in fighting them physically. It's in combining our knowledge and finding the blind spots in their data. We have to become an unpredictable, collaborative variable. A sense of grim purpose began to settle over the group. They weren't just victims anymore. They were a team. Okay, analyst, Maya said, giving Liam a nod of respect. What's the plan? First, reconnaissance, Liam stated. We need to understand our target. AETOS is the what. Their facility on the cliffs is the where. We still don't know the why. Why us? And why here? I propose we split into teams, based on our skills. He laid out his plan with the cool logic of a man used to organizing datasets. I'll handle the digital front. I'll do a deep dive on everything I can find about AETOS, their personnel, their connection to Chrono. There's a contact I made on the forums, a cybersecurity expert. I'll bring her in on this. We'll be the digital team. He looked at Maya and Ben. Maya, you're a journalist. You know how to observe, how to find the story. Ben, you're a foreman. You understand structures, security, access points. You two are the recon team. I want you to get as close to that facility as you can without being seen. Get photos, map out the perimeter, cameras, fences, roads. But stay hidden. You're just gathering intel. He then turned to Arthur. Arthur, you're our researcher. Keep digging into the public records. Permits, personnel lists, supply chains. Anything that connects AETOS to this town. You're the paper trail team. The rest of the group, the couple from Denver, the nurse from Miami, the terrified student Kevin, looked on, uncertain of their role. The rest of us, Liam said, addressing them directly, are the most important. We're the lookout team. You need to blend in. Spend time in town, at the diner, the grocery store. Listen, watch. See who comes and goes. Notice anything out of the ordinary. We need to know what normal looks like in Seacliff before we can spot the abnormal. Every piece of information matters. The plan was solid. It gave everyone a purpose, a role to play in their own fate. They were no longer just waiting for their clocks to run out. They were fighting back with the only weapons they had, their minds and their collective will. They agreed to disperse before dawn and communicate through a secure, encrypted messaging app. Liam returned to his motel room just as the sky was beginning to lighten from black to a deep indigo. The shabby room now felt like a command center. He immediately sent a message to Evelyn, probable cause, detailing everything, the meeting, the date clustering, and the AETOS connection. Her reply came back almost instantly. AETOS. I was afraid of that. They're a black box, Liam. Their public-facing business is just a front. Rumor in the cybersecurity community is that their real work is in advanced behavioral prediction for government and military clients. They don't just predict what a system will do, they predict what people will do. Chrono must be their magnum opus. A perfect, closed-loop system to test and refine their engine. This is bigger and more dangerous than I thought. I'm in. Let's see how good their firewalls really are. A cold knot formed in Liam's stomach. This was beyond a simple tech experiment. This was something far more sinister. Following Evelyn's guidance, he began his own deep dive, using secure search engines and backdoors she provided to access data not available on the public web. He searched for AETOS, Seacliff, Chrono, project names, anything. The hours blurred together. He focused on personnel. Who was running the Seacliff facility? He found a name buried in a partially redacted logistics manifest for a server shipment. Project manager, Dr. Eris Thorne. The name meant nothing to him. Evelyn sent another message. Thorne is a ghost. High-level security clearance. But I found something. He was a keynote speaker at a private AI symposium 4 years ago. The attendee list wasn't public, but the event photographer posted some pictures on a personal blog. Running facial recognition now. A moment later, an image file appeared on Liam's screen. It was a candid shot from the symposium. A group of men in suits, laughing, holding drinks. In the center was a sharp-featured man with cold, intelligent eyes. The caption identified him as Dr. AETOS Thorne, but it wasn't Thorne that made Liam's breath catch in his throat. It was the man standing next to him, with his arms slung over Thorne's shoulder in a familiar, friendly gesture. It was a younger, more carefree-looking version of his friend. The friend who had sent him the link. The friend who had pushed him to download Chrono. It was Josh. Liam stared at the photo, his world tilting on its axis. The random text message, the casual suggestion to download a wild new app, it was all a lie. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't random. Josh wasn't just the person who had introduced him to the app that was going to kill him. He was connected to the very people who created it. The conspiracy was no longer an abstract threat. It had a familiar, smiling face. And it had called him Dude. The pixels on the screen seemed to burn into Liam's retina. Josh. It was undeniably him. Younger, a little cockier, but the same easy grin, the same casual confidence. He was standing shoulder to shoulder with the architect of their doom, Dr. AETOS Thorne. They looked like colleagues, like friends. A memory surfaced, sharp and sudden. Josh, a year ago, showing off pictures from a hackathon he'd attended. He'd brushed it off as a nerdy weekend getaway, a chance to network. He'd even pointed out a big-shot AI developer he'd met. He had been pointing to Thorne. The foundation of Liam's reality fractured. Every interaction, every conversation he'd had with Josh over the past few years, began to reform in his mind under a new, sinister light. The casual questions about his data security work. The gifted smartwatch that tracked his health metrics. The link. That damned, casual link sent on a Tuesday afternoon. It wasn't a random discovery. It was a targeted delivery. A wave of icy fury washed over him, so potent it momentarily eclipsed his fear. This wasn't just about a faceless corporation or a malevolent algorithm. This was personal. He hadn't been a random variable. He was a hand-picked test subject, selected by someone he trusted. The thought was a violation, a betrayal so deep it left him breathless. His training, his analytical instinct, kicked in, a defense mechanism against the emotional storm. He saved a copy of the photo and immediately sent it to Evelyn. He didn't add any emotional commentary, just the facts. This is the man who sent me the Chrono link. His name is Josh. He called it a hackathon. He's my friend. Or was. Then, he messaged Maya, adding her and Arthur to a secure group chat. He uploaded the photo. We have a problem. The man on the right is Dr. Thorne, AETOS's project manager. The man on the left is my friend, Josh. He's the one who gave me the app. The conspiracy isn't random. It has an inside man, and he's connected to me. The replies came quickly. Maya's was pragmatic. This makes you a target, Liam, but also a valuable asset. Does he know that you know? Arthur's was more philosophical. The serpent was in your garden all along. This changes the nature of the game. Evelyn's reply was the most detailed. Running a search on your friend now. Josh Parker. Impressive digital footprint for a ghost. He's linked to 3 tech startups that were acquired by shell companies, all of which trace back to AETOS's R&D budget. He's not just an acquaintance of Thorne, he's a recruiter. A Judas goat, leading people to the slaughter. He's been on their payroll for at least 3 years. Liam, do not contact him. He is compromised. He is not your friend. Don't contact him. It was the only logical, sensible thing to do. Contacting Josh would mean showing their hand, revealing that they were organized and that they had identified him. It was a terrible strategic move. And Liam knew, with absolute certainty, that he was going to do it anyway. This was beyond strategy. This was a debt that needed to be paid, a question that demanded an answer. He pulled out the burner phone he'd brought, his hands shaking with a mixture of rage and grief. He manually typed in Josh's number, a number he knew by heart. He took a deep breath and hit send. It rang 3 times. Liam. Hey man. I was just thinking about you. You went completely dark. Is everything okay? Josh's voice was the same as always, warm, friendly, and utterly fake. The sound of it made Liam's stomach clench. I'm fine, Josh, Liam said, his own voice a low, controlled monotone. Just needed to get away. Yeah, I get that, Josh said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. That app really freaked you out, huh? Listen, about that. I feel terrible. It's probably just a stupid prank app. I should never have sent it. You know how I get with new tech. The lies were so effortless, so smooth. Liam felt a cold pit open in his stomach. It's funny, Josh, Liam said, his voice dangerously quiet. For a prank app, it seems to have some very impressive people behind it. There was a slight pause on the other end of the line. What are you talking about? I'm talking about AETOS Dynamics, Liam said, letting the name hang in the air. I'm talking about a man named Dr. Eris Thorne. I saw the photo from the symposium, Josh. The one from your hackathon. The line went completely silent. The warmth, the feigned concern, all of it evaporated, replaced by a cold, sterile quiet. When Josh spoke again, his voice was unrecognizable. It was flat, detached, and utterly devoid of emotion. You were never supposed to see that. Were you ever my friend, Josh? Liam asked, the question tearing at him. Friendship is a variable, Liam. Like trust. Like loyalty. They can all be modeled. Quantified, Josh, or whoever he truly was, replied. His voice was the voice of a true believer. You're a brilliant analyst. That's why I chose you. I thought you, of all people, would appreciate the beauty of it. Chrono is the key to humanity's future. It eliminates the chaos of the unknown. It brings order to death itself. Your contribution to the project is invaluable. My contribution? By dying. Liam spat. All great advancements require sacrifice, Josh said calmly. You should be proud. But you're digging into things you shouldn't be. You and your new friends in Seacliff. It's disappointing. My advice. Stop. Accept the gift you've been given. You know the date. You know the time. Most people live their whole lives in the dark. You get to see the final page. Don't spoil the ending. The line clicked. He was gone. Liam stared at the burner phone, his body trembling with a rage so pure it felt like fire. A gift. He called it a gift. The betrayal was complete, the enemy's philosophy laid bare. He was about to smash the phone against the wall when a new message alert pinged on his laptop. It was from Evelyn. Her tone was no longer analytical. It was urgent. Liam, have you heard from Maya or Ben? They were supposed to check in an hour ago. Liam's blood ran cold. He quickly typed back. No, nothing since we dispersed. Another message appeared instantly. It was a screenshot of a map. A red dot blinked on a coastal road. This was the last known position from the tracker on their burner phone, half a mile from the AETOS perimeter fence, Evelyn's message read. It went dead 5 minutes ago. The last words of Evelyn's message glowed on Liam's laptop screen, a digital death sentence. Tracker dead. The personal sting of Josh's betrayal was instantly cauterized by a surge of ice-cold dread. This was no longer a philosophical game of cat and mouse, a digital chess match against an unseen opponent. Two of their own, people he had met just hours ago, were missing. The variables in the experiment were being actively removed from the board. Liam's fingers flew across his keyboard, his analyst's mind taking over, pushing down the panic. He sent a single, clear message to the group chat he'd created with Arthur and the others. Code red. Maya and Ben are off-com. Last known position was near the AETOS perimeter. Do not leave your rooms. Do not communicate on open channels. Await instructions. I repeat, stay put. He had to take control, to stop the panic before it could shatter their fragile alliance. He was the hub of communication, the only one in direct contact with Evelyn. The responsibility fell on him. The replies flooded in, a digital chorus of fear. Kevin, the student, sent a stream of panicked question marks. The couple from Denver, Mark and Sarah, wanted to run. We have to get out of this town now, Mark typed. This was a mistake. It was Arthur, the history professor, who brought a measure of calm. Panicking is what they would predict. Liam is right. We hold our position and we gather information. What do we know, Liam? Liam relayed the information from Evelyn. No sign of a struggle on satellite. A single AETOS security vehicle spotted in the area around the time of the disappearance. The evidence was circumstantial, but the conclusion was undeniable. They hadn't just gotten lost. They had been taken. Evelyn's voice of pure, cold logic cut through the noise. Liam, you must make them understand. A rescue mission is suicide. It is the most predictable, emotionally driven response possible. It would be like feeding more mice into the snake's cage to see what happens. We have to assume Maya and Ben are gone. We need to learn from this, not repeat it. Gone. The word was so final. Liam felt a pang of guilt. This was his plan. He had sent them out there. As he was typing a message to the group, urging caution and trying to quell their rising fear, something happened. His phone buzzed. A hard, insistent vibration on the rickety motel desk. At the same time, a notification popped up on his laptop from the group chat. "My phone just buzzed," Arthur wrote. "Mine too," Sarah added a second later. "What is it?" Kevin typed, his panic palpable even in text. It was a push notification. From the Chrono app. Liam's blood turned to ice. He had a dozen other apps on his phone, but none had given him a notification since this nightmare began. With a trembling hand, he picked up the phone and looked at the screen. The message was simple and utterly soulless. "A cohort status update is available." Cohort. The word was so clinical, so detached, like they were a batch of lab samples. He tapped the notification, and the app opened. The interface was different. His own death date was still there, a constant, looming presence. But below it was a new section, titled Seacliff Cohort Status. Below the title was a list of 12 names. His name, Arthur's, Kevin's, Mark and Sarah's, Maya's, Ben's, all of them. Next to 10 of the names was a small, green, circular icon and the word, active. But next to Maya's name, the icon was red, and the word beside it was not deceased or terminated. It was one chilling corporate buzzword, recalibrated. His eyes darted to the next name on the list, Ben. The icon next to his name was also red, recalibrated. What does it mean? Liam whispered to the empty room. What is recalibrated? As if in answer, the screen flickered. The line of text with Ben's name on it glowed for a moment. His death date, October 22nd, began to flash. Liam stared, mesmerized in horror, as the numbers blurred and then vanished. For a terrifying second, the space was blank. Then, new numbers resolved in their place. A new date. A new time. October 6th, 8:30 a.m. Liam glanced at the clock in the corner of his laptop screen. It was 8:21 a.m. Ben's death, which had been 16 days away, was now less than 9 minutes away. The app wasn't just a predictor. It was an executioner. AETOS hadn't just captured them. They were making a statement. They were demonstrating their power, their absolute control over the system. This was a warning. A new message from Arthur appeared, his academic calm finally shattered. My God, they changed it. They can just change it. Liam could only watch, his horror mounting with each passing second. He imagined Ben, somewhere in that facility on the cliffs, knowing that his time had been violently, artificially ripped away from him. The group was silent, all of them undoubtedly staring at their own screens, watching a man's life count down in real time. 8:25, 8:26. The seconds ticked by, each one a hammer blow. This was the true nature of the experiment. It wasn't just about knowing. It was about being powerless. At exactly 8:30 a.m., Ben's line on the screen flashed one last time. The red, recalibrated, icon changed. It was replaced by a single, stark, gray word. Concluded. The word, concluded, was a flat gray epitaph on a digital gravestone. It hung on Liam's phone screen, cold, absolute, and utterly final. In the sterile quiet of his motel room, the silence was deafening. He imagined the others, a scattered handful of souls in their own lonely rooms, all staring at the same screen, united in a moment of shared, silent horror. They had just witnessed an execution. A sanitized, bloodless, digital execution, but an execution nonetheless. Ben was gone. For a long time, the secure group chat remained silent. There was nothing to say. No platitude, no expression of grief or anger could possibly measure up to what had just happened. They had been pawns in a game, and one of them had just been swept from the board as a demonstration of the player's absolute power. Then, the fragile dam of their unity finally broke. A message from Mark, the husband from Denver, appeared. It was blunt and final. Sarah and I are done. We're leaving. Now. Arthur was the first to reply. Mark, that's what they want. They proved running is futile. Mark's response was a torrent of digital rage and grief. And what's the alternative, old man? Sitting in these crappy rooms waiting for them to get bored and change our dates, too? Ben is dead. Maya is. God knows where. At least on the road, it feels like we have a choice. At least we can die trying. Then came the sentence that felt like a physical blow to Liam. "This is your fault, Liam. Your plan. Let's be strategic," you said. "You sent them out there. Your brilliant plan got them killed." The accusation landed with the force of a verdict. Liam stared at the words, his own guilt and self-doubt rushing in to fill the vacuum left by the shock. Was Mark right? He had been the one to propose the teams, the reconnaissance. He had tried to apply logic to a situation that was born of madness, and the result was catastrophic. The numbers on a spreadsheet don't scream when you delete them. People do. Before Liam could even formulate a response, Mark and Sarah sent one last message. "Good luck to the rest of you." Then, their icons in the group chat turned gray. They had left the group. The cohort of 12 was now a fractured group of 9. Liam leaned back in his chair, the weight of the last 24 hours crushing him. He felt responsible. He felt foolish. He, the data analyst who prided himself on predictable outcomes, had led 2 people into a slaughter. The cold fury he had felt toward Josh was now a sick, hollow feeling in the pit of his stomach. He was spiraling, lost in a sea of guilt and recrimination, when his phone buzzed again. It wasn't the group chat. It was another notification from the Chrono app. His first instinct was to throw the phone against the wall. But this notification was different. It wasn't a cohort update. It was a stylized, minimalist envelope icon. A direct message. His heart pounding, he tapped it. The message thread that opened was not from any of the others. The sender was listed simply as admin, and below it, a single name, Dr. Eris Thorne. The message was typed in a calm, professional, and utterly monstrous font. "Mr. Hudson, I've been reviewing your profile. Your analytical skills are, as your friend Josh suggested, quite remarkable. You grasp the statistical impossibility of your cohort's assembly faster than any of our previous test groups. You see patterns. You understand systems. It is a shame to see such a mind go to waste." Liam's mouth went dry. They were talking to him. The monster was speaking to him directly. "What happened to Mr. Bennington was regrettable," the message continued, "but necessary. Some variables are too volatile and must be pruned for the integrity of the experiment. Ms. Garcia, however, is another matter entirely. She is proving useful." Useful. The word made Liam feel sick. What were they doing to Maya? "Which brings me to you," Thorne wrote. "You understand that this project is bigger than any one individual. It is about bringing predictability to the final human variable. Order from chaos. A mind like yours should appreciate the elegance of it. I am prepared to offer you a choice. Your cohort is falling apart. They blame you. They will not listen to you. Their paths are set." The screen scrolled to the final, terrible paragraph. "But your path does not have to be. The project requires a certain number of data points to reach a successful conclusion. However, variables can be substituted. Cooperate with us, Mr. Hudson. Provide us with insight into your group's psychological state, their plans. Prove that you are the rational analyst we believe you to be. In return, your own conclusion can be postponed indefinitely. The choice is yours." The offer hung there on the screen, a lifeline made of poison. A way out. All he had to do was betray the handful of strangers who were his only allies. All he had to do was become another Josh. He stared at the screen, his mind a whirlwind of guilt, fear, and a terrifying sliver of temptation. His phone buzzed one more time, jarring him from his trance. It was a message in the group chat from Arthur. Liam's eyes scanned the words, and the little bit of air he had in his lungs escaped in a choked gasp. Arthur had written, "Everyone, check the app. Now, look at Maya." With trembling fingers, Liam switched back to the cohort status screen. He found Maya's name. The red icon was still there, but the word next to it was no longer recalibrated. It had changed. A new word had appeared. One that made no sense, and yet was more terrifying than any that had come before it. Integrating. Integrating. The word was a digital monstrosity, a piece of sterile, technical jargon used to describe an unspeakable human horror. In the group chat, speculation erupted into a firestorm of fear. Kevin, the student, was the first to voice the sci-fi nightmare they were all thinking. Integrating? Like, into a computer? Are they uploading her? It suggests a synthesis, Arthur typed, his academic calm frayed into something analytical and grim. A merging. Not just data extraction. This implies she is becoming a part of their system. Her consciousness, her memories, her humanity, raw material for their predictive engine. Liam felt a profound sickness wash over him. Arthur was right. This was a fate worse than Ben's swift, clean conclusion. Ben had been deleted. They were consuming Maya. They were turning her into a ghost in their own machine. Her human intuition and fear patterns used to make the algorithm that much more perfect, that much more deadly. She was a variable being absorbed into the equation. And then his eyes fell again on the other message still glowing on his screen. The offer from Dr. Thorne. Your own conclusion can be postponed indefinitely. The offer, which moments ago had presented a terrifying moral choice, now seemed like a cruel joke. He had been offered a choice between two doors. Behind one was a quick, certain death on October 28th. Behind the other was the possibility of survival, but at the cost of his soul, and with the ever-present threat of being repurposed as a living component in a nightmare machine. It wasn't a choice between life and death. It was a choice between two different kinds of hell. Mark's accusation echoed in his ears. This is your fault, Liam. Maybe it was. But that guilt, that crushing weight of responsibility, was now clarifying his decision. He couldn't save Ben. But maybe, just maybe, he could still do something for Maya. And he certainly wasn't going to become another one of Josh's successful recruits. He took screenshots of Thorne's message and Maya's new status and sent them to Evelyn in their private, encrypted channel. He added a single line. This is their offer. This is what they're doing to Maya. What's our move? He expected Evelyn to tell him to ignore it, to cut off all contact. Her response, when it came, surprised him. Don't you see it, Liam? This is a mistake on their part. A massive one. They think they're in complete control, so they're getting arrogant. They've just opened a direct, two-way communication channel with us. A back door. We can't get into their system from the outside, but they just invited us to knock on the front door. Liam was confused. What are you saying? You want me to talk to them? I want you to do more than that, Evelyn typed, her words forming a plan that was both brilliant and suicidally dangerous. I want you to accept his offer. You need to play the part of the broken, guilt-ridden analyst who's ready to sell out his friends to save his own skin. Mark's message was a gift. It gives you the perfect motivation. You can be our double agent. Our man on the inside. A double agent. The idea was insane. He was a data analyst, not a spy. They will feed you questions, Evelyn continued, and you will feed them carefully crafted disinformation that we create. And with every message they send you, I will be analyzing the metadata, the routing packets, looking for a digital seam I can exploit. It's a massive risk. If they suspect for a second that you're playing them, they'll conclude you with the press of a button. But it's the only real move we have left. Liam stared at the plan. It was terrifying. It would mean lying to the few allies he had left. It would mean putting his head directly into the digital lion's mouth. But it was also the first time since this nightmare began that he felt a surge of real agency. He wasn't just a rat in their maze anymore. He could be the one to set it on fire. I'll do it, he whispered to the empty room. First, he had to play his part for the group. He went back to the main chat. I got a message from them, he wrote, letting the sentence hang there for a moment. They offered me a deal. A way out. In exchange for information. He paused, then typed the lie. I told them to go to hell. Arthur replied immediately. Good man. The simple validation felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Now, for the main performance. With Evelyn's guidance, he crafted a reply to Dr. Thorne. He typed and deleted and retyped, every word a carefully chosen piece of bait. He had to sound like a man who had completely broken. Dr. Thorne, he wrote. You're right. They blame me. The group is finished. I spent my life looking for patterns, for order. I see it now. What you're doing, it's the next logical step. I don't want to be concluded. I don't want to be integrated. I want to survive. Tell me what you need from me. He held his breath and hit send. The message disappeared into the ether, a declaration of surrender that was in reality an act of war. The wait for a reply was the longest minute of his life. He felt like a traitor and a soldier all at once. The app pinged. A new message from Thorne. Liam's blood ran cold as he read it. A wise and logical decision, Mr. Hudson. We knew you would see reason. Your first task is a simple matter of verification. We have detected an unauthorized external entity attempting to probe our network. This entity uses the online handle, probable cause. We believe it is one of your cohort or a close associate. The message ended with a single, devastating question. Tell us, who and where is probable cause? The question on the screen was a perfectly sprung trap. Tell us, who and where is probable cause? Liam felt his blood run cold. It was a checkmate in a single move. If he said he didn't know, Thorn would assume he was lying or useless, and his conclusion would likely be rescheduled for the next 5 minutes. If he gave them Evelyn, he would be signing the death warrant of his only true ally, the one person who had any chance of fighting back. He would be no better than Josh. He was damned if he did, and dead if he didn't. He stared at the screen, his mind a frantic, screaming void. The cursor in the reply box blinked, a tiny, rhythmic heartbeat counting down the seconds he had left to live. He had walked into Evelyn's gambit, and now the jaws of the trap were closing on them both. He quickly sent a frantic, encrypted message to Evelyn, pasting Thorn's demand. They know your handle. It's over. What do I do? He expected a reply of panic, or a grim sign-off. Instead, Evelyn's response was back in seconds, and it was shockingly, terrifyingly calm. He doesn't know. He suspects. There's a difference. He's testing your loyalty and fishing for a lead at the same time. Don't panic. We just need to give him a different fish to catch. A different fish? He has your name, Evelyn. Liam typed back, his fingers fumbling on the keys. He has a handle, she corrected him. A digital shadow. He doesn't have me. We're going to give that shadow a body. We're going to create a ghost. The plan formulated in a rapid-fire exchange of messages, a desperate strategy session held in the space of 90 seconds. The best lies, Evelyn explained, are wrapped around a core of truth. They needed a plausible suspect. Someone angry, someone who had just gone off the grid, someone with a believable motive to attack AETOS. The grim reality of their choice settled over Liam like a shroud. Mark and Sarah, the couple from Denver who had fled that morning. We use Mark, Evelyn's message stated, her logic as sharp and brutal as a shard of glass. He just publicly blamed you in the group chat. His motivation is established. Grief, anger, a desire for revenge. We'll make him our probable cause. We'll say he's the tech-savvy one, and this is his foolish, emotional attempt to lash out. Thorn's psychological profile on him will support it. Liam felt a wave of revulsion. They were using Mark as a scapegoat, potentially painting a target on the back of a man who was already running for his life. But what choice did they have? It was Mark's life, or Evelyn's. And without Evelyn, they were all finished. It was a cold, brutal calculation. Okay, Liam typed, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. What do I tell him? I'm spoofing a digital trail right now, Evelyn replied, bouncing a signal off a tower near the Idaho border to make it look like they're heading east. It won't hold up to a deep investigation, but it will be enough to sell the lie for now. Tell Thorn. Sound reluctant. Sound like a man who is betraying someone to save himself. That's the role you're playing. Now go. Liam turned his attention back to the message from Thorn. He took a deep, shuddering breath and began to type his second great lie of the day. It's not one of the ones still here, he wrote, trying to channel the voice of a defeated man. It's the guy who left this morning. Mark. From Denver. He was always talking about his past life in IT. He blames me for what happened to his wife's friend, Maya, and for Ben. He was furious. After he left the group chat, he sent me a private message, said he was going to make AETOS pay, said he would burn the whole system down. I think he's in over his head. Last I heard, he was heading east, maybe trying to get back to Colorado. He hit send. The lie was out. He had just thrown a fellow victim to the wolves to save his queen. The waiting was agony. Every second of silence felt like a judgment. While he waited, the main group chat sprang to life. It was Arthur. I found something, he wrote, in the AETOS public patent filings. It's mostly corporate nonsense, but I found a series from 3 years ago that's disturbing. The title is Methodologies for Neural Data Synthesis in Predictive Matrices. Kevin replied, English, professor? It's a patent for technology that merges organic neural network data, brainwaves, essentially, with a predictive AI, Arthur explained. It's theoretical, of course. A research paper. But it describes a system where a human mind can be linked to an analytical engine, not just as a source of data to be copied, but as a living component. A coprocessor. They call it biological wetware integration. It's a blueprint for exactly what we fear they are doing to Maya. A collective, digital gasp went through the chat. The sci-fi horror was real. They had a patent for it. Just as Liam was processing this new horror, his phone pinged with a reply from Thorn. Liam's attention snapped back to his private channel with the devil. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Hudson. Your sincerity has been noted. We will look into this lead regarding Mr. Lambert. Liam's heart was pounding. Had he bought it? The message seemed non-committal, but he hadn't been concluded yet. That was a good sign. Then, a second message from Thorne came through, just a few seconds later. We believe in rewarding cooperation. As a sign of our mutual trust, we have provided an update on Ms. Garcia's status. Please check the cohort screen for a real-time progress metric. A progress metric. With a sense of profound dread, Liam switched back to the cohort status screen. He found Maya's name. The word integrating was still there. But now, next to it, was a new piece of information, glowing in a faint, sickly green. It was a percentage. Integrating. 12% complete. Liam stared, horrified. It was a progress bar. A slow, creeping, digital measure of a person's humanity being systematically dismantled and absorbed into a machine. The horror of her fate wasn't just a concept anymore. It was a number. And it was climbing. The progress bar was a form of psychological warfare, elegant in its cruelty. 12% complete. The number was a slow, creeping poison. Every time Liam refreshed the chrono app, he half expected it to have ticked up to 13%, another percentage of Maya's soul consumed by the machine on the hill. The digital execution of Ben had been a shock, a brutal display of power. This was different. This was a slow, methodical erasure, and they were all being forced to watch. In the group chat, the fragile morale that had been shattered by Ben's death and Mark's departure now curdled into a kind of grim despair. They were trapped, outmaneuvered at every turn. Their digital expert was being hunted, and their enemy was a corporation that could kill them with a software update. What do we do? Kevin typed, the message radiating a sense of hopeless panic. We can't fight them online. We can't get near them physically. We're just waiting. It was Arthur who answered, his words cutting through the despair with the dry precision of a history lecture. Our strategy has been flawed. We have been attempting to fight a 21st century battle on their terms, in the digital realm where they are gods. We need to find a different battlefield. What battlefield is left? Liam messaged back, his own hope worn thin. The 20th century, Arthur replied. This town, the people. AETOS has built a perfect digital fortress. Their predictive models can probably guess every move we make on a keyboard or a highway. But I would wager their system has a blind spot. A hole in its logic. An analog hole, Liam murmured to himself, understanding dawning. Precisely, Arthur's text confirmed. Old-fashioned, face-to-face, human intelligence. AETOS is a ghost here. A massive high-tech facility that employs almost no locals. But they had to build it. They had to interact with the town at some point. There are stories here. Rumors. Resentments. We need to stop looking at screens and start talking to people. It was a radical shift in strategy, and a dangerous one. They were all outsiders here. But Arthur's logic was sound. They had to find a variable the system couldn't easily quantify. A new plan was formed, born of desperation. Liam would remain in his motel room, their digital nerve center, maintaining his treacherous connection with Thorne. Arthur would continue his deep dive into the town's archives, looking for paper records that left the others to venture into the town itself. Kevin, the terrified student, was the most reluctant. I can't, he typed. I'm no good at talking to people. I'll mess it up. It was Chloe, the quiet nurse from Miami, who responded. You won't be alone, Kevin. I'll go with you. My whole job is making scared people feel comfortable enough to talk. We'll just go to the local bar tonight. Order a beer. Listen. That's all. And so, as evening fell and a persistent cold drizzle began to slick the streets of Seacliff, two of the cohort's most unlikely members walked into the Salty Dog, the town's only real bar. The place was exactly as one would imagine, dimly lit, smelling of stale beer and fried fish, and filled with a handful of weary-looking men in flannel shirts and work boots. Liam, Arthur, and the others waited in a state of tense silence, monitoring a private channel for updates. For the first hour, the reports were mundane. Ordered a beer. No one is talking to us. Then, an old fisherman is complaining about crab prices. Liam's nerves were shot. He was juggling 3 different conversations: the tense, silent vigil for news from the bar, his ongoing high-stakes chess match with Evelyn about how to handle Thorne, and the open channel with Thorne himself, where he had to maintain the fiction of being a broken man ready to cooperate. Then, a new message came from Chloe. We've got something. The story unfolded in a series of texts. Chloe had managed to strike up a conversation with the old, grizzled bartender, a man named Sal. She'd used the excuse of being a tourist, asking about the town's history. Sal had been guarded, wary of outsiders. But Chloe's calm, unassuming nature, and Kevin's obvious, non-threatening nervousness must have disarmed him. She eventually steered the conversation to the biggest, most mysterious landmark in the area, the facility on the cliffs. Sal's face had darkened. He called it the Spook House. He said no one from the town had worked there in years, not since it was fully operational. But he remembered when they were building it out. He says they hired a few locals for basic labor, Chloe typed. But only one got to work deep inside. A local electrician. A genius with wiring, but a bit of a town eccentric. His name is Miller. Sal told them that Miller had worked up at the facility for almost a full year, longer than any other local. He was tasked with running miles of specialized, high-grade fiber optic and power conduits. When the job was done, he came back, different, quieter, more paranoid. He started drinking heavily. He quit his job and now lived as a recluse in a small cabin in the woods just east of town. Chloe's final message made Liam's heart leap. Sal says Miller doesn't talk to anyone much anymore. But when he's drunk, he mutters about the things he saw up there. He talks about wires that listen, and complains that he can still hear ghosts in the machine. A ghost in the machine. An electrician. A man who had been inside the belly of the beast and had come back haunted. They had a new target. Not a digital file or a corporate entity. A person. A potential source who might know the physical layout, the security weaknesses, the very secrets that were hidden inside AETOS' fortress. For the first time in days, they had a flicker of something that felt like hope. Their analog hole had a name, Miller. The name Miller echoed in the secure group chat, a single word that represented their first tangible, human lead. For a moment, the crushing despair that had settled over the group was lifted, replaced by a fragile, dangerous thing, hope. They had a new path, a new objective. The planning began immediately, a frantic, whispered strategy session conducted over encrypted text. They couldn't all approach him. A group of strangers descending on the cabin of a known recluse would send him running, or worse. They needed a small, non-threatening team. The consensus was clear. Chloe, with her calm, disarming demeanor, had to lead. And Kevin, despite his fear, had to go with her. An anxious young man and a kind-faced woman were far less intimidating than a group of grim-faced adults. Arthur, true to his role, immediately set to work pulling up old county plat maps, pinpointing the exact location of Miller's property deep in the forested hills east of town. Liam's role was the most difficult. He had to remain behind, the man at the center of the web, and continue his perilous performance for Dr. Thorne. He had to report on the group's activities, but he had to do it in a way that protected their one real lead. He waited an hour, letting enough time pass for his report to seem genuine, and then he composed his message to his handler. "They're falling apart," Liam typed, carefully crafting the lie. "The group is desperate. They've given up on any real strategy. Their latest plan is to talk to the locals. Fishermen, bartenders. They're grasping at straws, hoping to find some ghost story about your facility. It's pathetic. They're broken. It's only a matter of time before they all flee or break down completely." He was painting a picture of a defeated, incompetent enemy, hoping Thorne would see their new plan as insignificant, a last, futile gasp not worth his full attention. He was hiding their most important move in plain sight. Thorne's reply was brief and chilling. "Your assessment aligns with our projections. Continue to monitor their decay. Your cooperation is valued." The next morning, Tuesday, October 7th, dawned gray and misty. A thick Oregon fog clung to the tops of the towering Douglas firs, creating a world of shadows and silence. Chloe and Kevin drove their rental car as far as a muddy, unpaved logging road would allow, then got out and began the hike to Miller's cabin. They walked in silence, the only sound the soft squelch of their boots on the wet ground and the steady drip of water from the enormous ferns that lined the path. The woods felt ancient and alive, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and pine. It was beautiful, but it was an unnerving, watchful kind of beauty. After a 20-minute walk, they saw it through the trees. The cabin was small and dilapidated, with a sagging porch and a thin plume of smoke curling from a stone chimney. It looked less like a home and more like a wounded animal hiding from the world. As they got closer, they noticed strange details. Strings of empty tin cans were strung between trees near the path, a primitive alarm system. A collection of polished reflective metal scraps hung from the porch awning, twisting and turning in the slight breeze like strange wind chimes. The place radiated an aura of deep, persistent paranoia. They approached the front door cautiously. There were no windows on the front of the cabin, only a solid, heavy-looking wooden door. Chloe took a deep breath, gave Kevin a reassuring nod, and knocked. The sound was loud in the unnerving quiet of the woods. They waited. Nothing. She knocked again, harder this time. "Mr. Miller," she called out, her voice steady. "My name is Chloe. We're sorry to bother you, but we were hoping we could talk to you for a moment." Silence. Kevin looked at Chloe, his eyes wide. Maybe he wasn't home. Maybe they should just leave. Then, with a sudden violent crack, the bolt on the door was thrown. The door was ripped inward, and a man stood framed in the dark doorway. He was not the frail, old man they had pictured. He was wiry and gaunt, with a wild mane of gray hair and a beard that hadn't seen a razor in years. But it was his eyes that seized their attention. They were wide, frantic, and filled with a haunted, terrified intelligence. And in his hands, held with a practiced ease that suggested it was never far from his reach, was a pump-action shotgun. He leveled it directly at Chloe's chest. "Get off my land," he rasped, his voice rough from disuse. "Sir, we don't want any trouble," Chloe said, slowly raising her hands. Kevin, beside her, was frozen, his face pale with terror. The man, Miller, took a step forward onto the porch, his wild eyes darting between Chloe and Kevin. His gaze was so intense it felt like a physical violation. He squinted, his head cocked to the side as if listening to a sound only he could hear. "You're from the hill," he whispered, the words a mixture of accusation and pure terror. "Don't lie to me. I know you are." "The hill?" Chloe asked, feigning confusion. "Sir, we don't know what you're talking about." "Liar!" he roared, taking another step closer, the barrel of the shotgun unwavering. "I can see it on you. The stink of it. I can see their ghost in your eyes. They sent you to shut me up, didn't they? They finally sent someone to finish the job." Chloe and Kevin stared at him, their hope of finding a helpful source evaporating in a wave of cold fear. They hadn't found a potential ally. They had found a broken man with a shotgun, and he was convinced that they were the monsters that had been haunting him for years. The shotgun barrel was a perfect, dark circle, an eclipse that threatened to swallow all the light and hope in the world. Kevin was paralyzed, his mind a white noise scream of pure terror. But Chloe, her hands still raised in a gesture of surrender, felt her professional instincts take over. As a nurse, she had faced fear, madness, and grief. She had learned to find the person inside the panic. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice impossibly calm, "I can see how scared you are. We're scared too. We are not here to hurt you." "Everyone from the hill says that," Miller rasped, his knuckles white on the gun. "They lie. It's all they do. They whisper lies through the wires." Direct denial wasn't working. He was too deep in his paranoia. She needed to break through his reality, to show him a truth he couldn't deny. It was a terrible risk. It meant exposing their deepest secret, their greatest vulnerability. But it was the only card she had left to play. "You're right about the ghost," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Miller's wild eyes narrowed. He hadn't expected her to agree. "We have it too. We're infected with it. The ghost you see in our eyes, we see it on our phones." Slowly, deliberately, Chloe lowered one of her hands and reached into her pocket. Miller's shotgun twitched. "Easy," she said, her movements fluid and non-threatening. "I'm just getting my phone." She pulled it out, her thumb finding the Chrono app icon. She opened it to her status screen, her own death date glowing with its indifferent sentence. Holding it out in her open palm, she took a single, slow step forward. "This is our ghost, Mr. Miller. It's a clock, and it's counting down. They gave it to us. The people on the hill. We're not their agents. We're their test subjects. Just like you." Miller stared at the phone screen. His gaze flickered from the glowing numbers to Chloe's face, then to Kevin's, who was trembling but managed a terrified nod of confirmation. The certainty in Miller's eyes began to waver, replaced by a dawning, horrified recognition. The shotgun barrel slowly lowered until it was pointing at the damp wood of his porch. The clock," he stammered, the word catching in his throat. "I heard them talking about it. The endpoint projection. I never knew it was on a phone." He looked at them, his paranoia momentarily eclipsed by a shared, human terror. "You'd better come inside," he said gruffly, turning and disappearing into the darkness of his cabin. Chloe and Kevin exchanged a look of profound relief and stepped across the threshold. The inside of the cabin was even more jarring than the outside. The few windows were boarded over from the inside. Strange, jury-rigged electronic devices sat on every surface, buzzing and clicking softly. and tacked to the walls, covering almost every square inch, was a fine copper wire mesh, gleaming faintly in the dim light. It was a makeshift Faraday cage, a desperate attempt to block out some unseen signal. "You said you could see a ghost in our eyes," Kevin said, his voice barely a whisper as his courage slowly returned. "What did you mean?" Miller sank into a worn-out armchair, the shotgun resting against its side. "I was the last local they trusted," he began, his voice low and gravelly. "I wasn't just running cable. I was wiring their core. The server rooms, the control center, the matrix room, they called it." He shuddered. "That place ain't right. The tech in there, it's not just computers. It feels alive. The wires don't just carry data, they hum with thought." He rubbed his temples, a gesture of deep, persistent pain. "They have scanners, not cameras. Something else. It reads you. Your biosignature. The faint electrical field your own body puts out. It's like a fingerprint, but for a living thing. And when they decide to put you in their system, when they date you, they tag that signature. It's a marker, a brand. That's the ghost. It's their brand on your soul." Liam, Arthur, and the others received this information in a stunned, silent series of texts from Chloe. They weren't just being tracked by their phones. They were physically, energetically marked. "I worked in the heart of that system for a year," Miller continued, his voice cracking. "Being around that energy, day in and day out, it fried something in me, changed me. Now I can perceive it. I can't read minds or anything stupid like that. But I can see the ghost. It's a faint shimmer in the air around a person. A wrongness. That's how I knew you two were connected to the hill. I saw it on you the second you stepped out of the woods. This was it. The breakthrough." Miller wasn't just a source. He was a detector. A human divining rod for AETOS's influence. He could be their secret weapon. He could tell them who in this town was truly a local, and who might be an agent. "So you can see it on anyone they're tracking?" Chloe asked, her mind racing with the possibilities. "Clear as day," Miller said, his gaze becoming distant and haunted again. "It's why I don't go into town much anymore. Too many ghosts." "Are there others?" Kevin asked. "Others like us in town?" Miller nodded slowly. "I've seen a few. Faint traces, like yours. People who look scared, lost. The new ones. But there's another one. One I've seen for a while now. His signal is different. Stronger. More embedded." "Who is it?" Chloe pressed. "Someone from our group?" Miller looked up, his haunted eyes locking onto Chloe's. A grim, bitter smile touched his lips. "No, not one of yours. It's the fella who runs the Salty Dog. The bartender, Sal. His ghost doesn't look like a brand. It looks like a uniform. The bartender, Sal. The friendly, grizzled face of the town, the man who had seemed so authentic in his weariness, was one of them. The lead he had given them wasn't a lucky break. It was a calculated move. A piece of bait deliberately offered. Chloe and Kevin stood in the dim, cluttered cabin, the friendly ghost of hope that had filled the room just moments before replaced by the cold, hard phantom of paranoia. They hadn't been clever. They had been led. Chloe was the first to recover, her mind racing. "We have to go," she whispered to Kevin. "Now." She turned to Miller, who was watching them with his haunted, knowing eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. You may have just saved our lives." "They don't want you dead yet," Miller grunted, picking up his shotgun again, the weapon now seeming less like a threat and more like a permanent extension of his arm. "They're still watching. Still measuring. The killing comes later. Get out of here. And don't come back. My ghost is faint. I like to keep it that way." They didn't need to be told twice. As they left the cabin, Chloe discreetly began typing a summary of the new, horrifying intelligence into the secure group chat. The walk back through the misty Oregon woods was a completely different experience from the one just an hour before. The watchful silence of the forest no longer felt beautiful or ancient. It felt like the silence of a predator. Every snapped twig, every rustle of leaves, sounded like an approaching footstep. They felt exposed, marked, their AETOS ghost, a beacon signaling their every move to an unseen enemy. The news about Sal landed in the group chat like a grenade. The reaction was immediate and visceral. "He played us," Arthur typed, his usual academic composure gone. "He was testing us, gauging our methods. He led us to Miller to see what we would do. They're not just predicting us, they're actively directing us." The realization settled over all of them. Their entire analog strategy was compromised before it even began. The town wasn't a neutral zone, it was a curated fishbowl. Sal wasn't just an informant. He was a shepherd, and they were the flock. Liam felt a fresh wave of pressure settle on his shoulders. He now had to report to Thorn again, maintaining his cover. But his lie about the group's pathetic plan to talk to locals was now dangerously close to the truth of what they had been manipulated into doing. Was Thorn toying with him? Did he already know they had gone to Miller's? Was this all an elaborate test of his loyalty? He crafted another careful message, feigning dejection. The bar idea was a bust. They talked to the bartender, got nothing. Morale is at an all-time low. I think some of them are ready to just give up completely. He was feeding Thorn an image of utter despair, praying it was what the system expected to see. Back in their respective rooms, a new, more potent paranoia took hold. If Sal was an AETOS asset, who else was? The woman at the motel front desk, with her vacant smile. The mailman who delivered nothing but junk mail. The checkout clerk at the tiny grocery store. Every casual interaction was now suspect. Every friendly local was a potential watcher. They were completely surrounded, not by armed guards, but by a quiet, pervasive network of human sensors. Chloe and Kevin made it back to the Tides Inn, their faces pale. As Chloe got her key from the front desk, the clerk gave her a smile that now seemed predatory. "Hope you two enjoyed your hike," the woman said cheerfully. Chloe's blood ran cold. They hadn't told anyone they were going for a hike. The walls were closing in. Every strategy had failed. Their digital efforts were being monitored. Their physical reconnaissance had led to capture and death. And their analog investigation was a manipulated sham. They were completely and utterly boxed in, isolated in their rooms, their only connection a fragile, encrypted chat group, waiting for their dates to arrive or for their status to be changed to concluded. Despair, thick and suffocating, settled over them. They had no moves left. It was in this moment of absolute hopelessness that something impossible happened. A new notification pinged on all of their phones at the same time. It was from the secure group chat. But the message wasn't from Liam, or Arthur, or Chloe, or any of the active members. The name that appeared on the screen was Maya. Her icon, which had been dark and silent since her capture, was suddenly active. A single message appeared beneath her name. It wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't a warning. It was 5 cryptic, chilling words that made no sense at all. The integration is a doorway. They stared at their screens, dumbfounded. Was this a trick? A cruel joke from Thorn, using her account to mess with their minds? Was it even her? Before anyone could type a reply, a second message from her account appeared. Not a tomb. Listen. And then, her icon went dark again. She was gone. The messages just hung there in the chat log, a baffling, ghostly transmission from inside the machine. Listen to what? What doorway? The message was incomprehensible, but it was the first thing in 2 days that hadn't been predicted or controlled by AETOS. It was an anomaly. A ghost from their own side, whispering from the heart of the enemy's fortress. The 2 messages from Maya's account hung in the chat log, an impossible artifact from a place beyond their reach. The immediate reaction was a chaotic explosion of digital panic and disbelief. It's a trap, Kevin typed immediately, his fear overriding any sense of hope. It has to be Thorn. He's using her account to lure us out. To make us do something stupid. It was the logical, paranoid conclusion, and Liam couldn't immediately dismiss it. But Arthur's response was more measured, more thoughtful. Perhaps. But consider the language. Doorway, not prison. Tomb. These words are specific, metaphorical. It doesn't sound like Thorn's clinical, corporate tone. It sounds poetic. It sounds like a human trying to describe the indescribable. Liam's mind was racing. He forwarded the screenshots to Evelyn. Her response was swift and analytical, cutting through the emotional noise. I've analyzed the packet data for the messages. It's strange. They didn't come from an external IP address trying to access our server. There's no trace of a breach. The messages originated from within the server's authenticated user list. It's as if Maya herself logged in and typed them. Thorn could spoof that, but it would be incredibly difficult to do without leaving a trace. I can't say it's not a trap, Liam. But if it is, it's the most sophisticated one they've laid for us yet. It wasn't a no. It was a maybe. A sliver of possibility that was just enough to ignite a desperate spark of hope. The second message was the key. Listen. It was an instruction. But listen to what? The answer, Liam knew, wasn't on a screen. It was in a paranoid electrician's cabin in the middle of the woods. Getting back to Miller was a risk. After the revelation about Sal and the network of watchers, every movement in town was a danger. Chloe and Kevin agreed to go, but this time they took a different route, parking their car miles away and hiking through the dense, fog-shrouded forest, avoiding all roads and paths. They found Miller on his porch, cleaning his shotgun, his wild eyes scanning the woods. He looked up as they approached, his weapon held ready, but he lowered it when he recognized them. "You're back," he grunted. "Figured you would be. The ghosts don't let go that easy." "We need your help," Chloe said, wasting no time. She showed him the messages from Maya. "She says we need to listen. You told us you hear ghosts in the machine. What do you hear?" Miller stared at the phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. He read the words, "The integration is a doorway," and "listen" over and over. A slow, dawning recognition spread across his face. It wasn't a look of surprise, but of confirmation, as if a half-forgotten, nagging thought had just been proven true. "The hum," he whispered, his eyes becoming unfocused. "It's not just a hum." He led them back inside his copper-meshed cabin. "When I was wiring the core," he explained, his voice low and urgent, "the power draw was immense. You could feel it all over town if you knew what to look for. A subtle vibration in the lines. A resonance. I always thought it was just noise, a byproduct of the system. But sometimes, it felt like it had a pattern, a rhythm, like a heartbeat in the wires. I thought I was going crazy." He moved to a corner of the cluttered room and pulled a dusty tarp off a strange, homemade device. It was a mess of wires, dials, and a small, green-screen cathode ray tube. It looked like an old oscilloscope that had been heavily and obsessively modified. "I built this to try and make sense of it," Miller said, his hands moving with a sudden focused energy as he plugged the device into a wall socket. "To prove to myself I wasn't hearing things. I wanted to see the noise." He flipped a switch, and the screen flickered to life, displaying a chaotic, jagged green line, the visual representation of the standard 60 Hz electrical current running through the cabin's walls. "That's the normal stuff," he said. "The noise of the world." His fingers moved to a series of dials. "But the AETOS signal, it's buried underneath. A carrier wave on a different frequency. You have to filter out all the junk." He twisted a dial, and the jagged line flattened. He twisted another, and the screen filled with static. He kept adjusting, his expression one of intense concentration, like a safecracker listening for the faintest click. "Come on, you devil," he muttered. "I know you're in there." And then, it happened. As he turned a final dial, the chaotic static on the screen suddenly resolved. The noise fell away, and underneath it all, a second signal appeared. It was clean, rhythmic, and perfectly, undeniably artificial. It was a steady repeating pattern of short and long pulses. A digital heartbeat. They stared at the screen, mesmerized. It was a signal. A broadcast. Hidden in the very power lines that fed the town, a message was pulsing out from the facility on the hill. It had been there all along, a ghost whispering in every wire, in every lit room in Seacliff. They had just never known how to listen. "My God," Kevin breathed, his face illuminated by the green glow of the screen. "Maya," Chloe said, her voice filled with awe and terror. "She didn't just send a message. She is the message." The integration wasn't a tune. It was a doorway. And Maya, now a part of the AETOS machine, had just opened it and was screaming for them to listen. The rhythmic pulse on Miller's oscilloscope was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Liam had ever seen. It was proof of life. It was a message from a ghost. Chloe and Kevin, their hands shaking with a mixture of fear and adrenaline, recorded a full 2-minute video of the pulsing green line and transmitted it to the secure group chat. In his motel room, Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. Their first piece of intelligence from behind enemy lines. He immediately forwarded the video to Evelyn. "This is it," he typed. "The signal from Maya. Can you make sense of it?" Evelyn's reply was instant, her professional focus absolute. "It's a binary stream, encoded in a pulse width modulation. Classic, old-school data transmission. Low bandwidth, but hard to detect. She's using their own infrastructure against them. Smart girl. I'm writing a script to translate the visual pulses into text. Give me a minute." The next 60 seconds felt like an eternity. The entire cohort waited in breathless silence, scattered in their lonely rooms, all connected by this single, fragile thread of hope. Liam stared at his screen, imagining Evelyn on the other end, code flying from her fingertips, turning a ghostly whisper into tangible words. Then, a new file appeared in their private channel. It was a simple text document. Liam's hand trembled as he clicked it open. It wasn't a message of hope. It wasn't a cry for help. It wasn't an explanation. It was a list. A cold, stark, horrifying ledger. It was a stream of names, cities, and dates. Emily Carter, Austin, Texas, November 15th. David Chen, Seattle, Washington, November 18th. Ryan Peterson, Denver, Colorado, November 19th. And the list went on. 10 names, 10 cities, 10 dates, all clustered in the middle of November. Arthur was the first to understand. "My God," he typed in the group chat. "This isn't about us. This is about who comes after us. This is the next cohort." The truth of it slammed into Liam with the force of a physical blow. Maya, from her position inside the AETOS machine, had gained access to their plans. She was leaking a list of the next group of victims, the next set of variables to be herded, tested, and concluded. Their own private horror was about to be repeated with a new cast of unsuspecting characters. The experiment wasn't ending with them. They were just the beta test. Liam scrolled down the list, his blood running cold, until one name made him stop dead. Sarah Jenkins, Chicago, Illinois, November 21st. He knew her. Sarah Jenkins had been a junior analyst at his insurance firm, a bright, ambitious young woman in the department next to his. They weren't close friends, but they had shared coffee, complained about deadlines, and worked on a project together once. He could picture her face perfectly. And she was on the list. She was scheduled to be a victim. The abstract list of names was no longer abstract. It was real. The conspiracy that had consumed his life was about to consume someone he knew. Their mission, which had been a desperate struggle for their own survival, suddenly became something much bigger. It was now a rescue mission. A frantic race to warn a list of strangers that a technologically advanced monster was coming for them. But how? They were trapped, monitored. They couldn't just pick up a phone and start calling these people without AETOS knowing immediately. As the group began to frantically discuss the implications of this new intelligence, a different notification popped up on Liam's phone. It was a direct message from Dr. Thorne. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. "Mr. Hudson," the message began, Thorne's tone colder and more impatient than before. "Your cohort has been quiet for several hours. Our projections suggest a low probability of total despair. More likely, you are planning something foolish based on some insignificant piece of local gossip." Thorne was closing the net. He knew they were up to something. "Your cooperation has been lacking since your initial report," the message continued. "This is not the behavior of a man committed to his own survival. I require something of value. A concrete piece of intelligence about your group's plans or internal communications. Provide it now." The final sentence was a cold, sharp blade. "Or we may be forced to recalibrate another of your friends to help motivate you. Perhaps the professor. His historical perspective is becoming tedious." Liam stared at the screen, his body frozen in a state of pure, adrenaline-fueled panic. It was the ultimate trap. He was holding the most valuable intelligence imaginable, AETOS' entire plan for the next phase of their project. But he couldn't reveal it. And if he didn't give Thorne something real, something tangible, Arthur would be the next one to have his status changed to concluded. He was caught in an impossible checkmate, forced to choose between the future victims on Maya's ledger and the life of his friend sitting in a motel room just a few doors down. The ghost in the machine had given them a weapon, but the monster was now holding a gun to his friend's head, demanding he hand it over. The threat from Dr. Thorne was not a suggestion. It was a loaded gun held to Arthur's head, and the trigger was in Liam's hand. "Report something of value. Now." The words pulsed on the screen, a digital ultimatum. The choice was stark, brutal, and immediate. He could sacrifice the future, the list of names, the mission to warn them, to save the man in the room down the hall. Or he could sacrifice Arthur, a man he respected, a friend, for the greater good. His mind, the analytical engine that had defined his entire life, spun through probabilities and outcomes. But this wasn't a problem that could be solved with logic. It was a raw, human calculation of one life versus many. He laid the situation bare in the secure chat with Evelyn and Arthur, pasting Thorne's message. "This is his demand. He's forcing my hand. He wants something real." Evelyn's reply was what he expected, cold, pragmatic, and utilitarian. "It's a classic gambit, Liam. He's testing your resolve and trying to force you to reveal your most valuable asset. We cannot give him the list. The mission to expose AETOS is bigger than any single one of us. You know the calculation that must be made." The calculation. The cold, bloodless term for sacrificing a human life. Before Liam could even respond to her ruthless logic, a new message appeared. It was from Arthur. "Liam, Evelyn is correct," the professor wrote, his tone calm and resolute, devoid of any panic. "My own conclusion was projected for October 30th. Whether it is today or in 3 weeks is of little consequence in the grand scheme. What matters is the information Maya has provided. You cannot, and must not, compromise that for my sake. It has been an honor to work with you all. Do what you must." The quiet dignity of Arthur's sacrifice was more devastating than any plea for help could have been. He was ready to die to protect their mission. And Liam couldn't let him. There had to be another way. There had to be a third option. He frantically scanned the board in his mind, assessing their assets. They had the list, the most valuable piece. They had Maya's signal. They had their own small, fractured group. And they had Miller, the paranoid electrician. A verifiable, human source who had been inside the facility. A man whose existence was unknown to Thorne, until now. The thought was monstrous. Sacrificing the broken, paranoid man who had helped them. Throwing him to the wolves to save one of their own. It was a betrayal. It was a horrific choice. And it was the only move he had. He would be trading one life for another, but he would be preserving the mission. With a sense of self-loathing that felt like a physical sickness, Liam made the decision. He had to make the offering look genuine, like a painful concession. He sent a message to Thorne, the words feeling like poison on his fingertips. "You want something of value? Fine," he typed. "You win." The group didn't get their lead from the bartender. They were led to him by another source. A man. An electrician who used to work for you. His name is Miller. He lives in the woods east of town. He's the one who told them about the ghosts. He's a paranoid wreck, but he was inside your facility. They think he's their key to everything. They're planning on going back to him, to try and get floor plans, security details. That's all I know. He hit send, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He had just signed Miller's death warrant. He immediately confessed in his private chat with Arthur and Evelyn. "I did it. I gave him Miller. It was the only way to save you, Arthur, and protect the list. I'm sorry." Arthur's reply was simple. "A hard choice, Liam. I do not envy you the weight of it." Liam's phone pinged. It was Thorne. "Excellent, Mr. Hudson. That is information of value. A loose end we were unaware of. Your compliance has been noted." A second message followed. "Professor Monroe's status will remain unchanged for now. You have bought him a reprieve. See that you continue to earn it." A wave of relief, tainted and sour, washed over Liam. Arthur was safe. The list was safe. The price was Miller's life. He leaned back, his body trembling, his conscience screaming. At that moment, a new, frantic message popped into the main group chat. It was from Chloe. She and Kevin had left their phone in Miller's cabin, propped up and recording a live feed of the oscilloscope screen so the group could monitor Maya's signal. Chloe's message was a single, terrifying sentence. "The signal is gone." Liam's blood turned to ice. He scrambled to open the video feed. He had been so focused on the chess match with Thorne that he hadn't been watching. The screen showed the interior of Miller's cabin, the faint green glow of the oscilloscope in the center of the frame. But the steady, rhythmic pulse, the digital heartbeat that was their only connection to Maya, was gone. The line on the screen was perfectly, unnaturally flat. Thorne hadn't just taken the information about Miller. In the same moment, he had found a way to cut their line to Maya. Or worse. The thought was too horrific to complete. The ghost in the machine had gone silent. They were blind. They were deaf. And they were completely, utterly alone again. The flat green line on the oscilloscope screen was the visual representation of absolute silence. Maya was gone. Their only lifeline, their ghost in the machine, had been severed. In the main group chat, a profound and terrible despair took root. They were blind, deaf, and trapped in a town full of watchers, waiting for a corporation to decide when and how to end their lives. For Liam, the silence was a personal accusation. He had given Thorne a lead, a real, tangible piece of information. And within the hour, Maya's signal had vanished. The timing was too perfect. He couldn't escape the sickening conclusion. His betrayal of Miller had somehow led to this. Had AETOS, in investigating his tip, tightened their internal security and discovered Maya's broadcast? He would never know for sure, but the guilt was a physical weight, crushing the air from his lungs. He was the leader who had just led them into a dead end, and the traitor who had paid for a friend's life with a secret he couldn't share. They were back to zero. Worse than zero, because now the enemy knew they were organized and knew they were actively seeking information. They had lost the element of surprise. It was Evelyn, their remote anchor in the storm, who refused to accept defeat. Her message cut through the group's digital mourning with sharp, tactical precision. She's not gone. Her broadcast is. There's a difference. They found the leak and plugged it. It means she's still in there, still a threat to them. We've lost our listening post, so we need to plant our own. Plant what? Arthur typed back. We can't get near the place. We don't need to get into the heart of it, Evelyn explained, her plan unfolding in a series of rapid-fire texts. I've designed a worm. A piece of malware. It's not a battering ram, it's a whisper. Its only function is to infiltrate their local network, find the signature of Maya's integration, and create a new, heavily encrypted, low-bandwidth broadcast channel. It will also copy any files it can access related to the cohort program. It's our one shot at getting back inside. The idea was brilliant, but it had a fatal flaw. How do we get it in there? Liam asked. Their network is almost certainly air-gapped from the outside world. We can't email it to them. No, Evelyn confirmed. This is where the digital world ends and the physical one begins. We need to get this worm, on a standard USB drive, plugged into any network device inside that facility. A desktop computer, a diagnostic terminal, even a smart TV in a break room. Just for a few seconds. That's all it needs. The sheer impossibility of the task settled over them. It was a suicide mission. It was Arthur who provided the key. He had been quietly continuing his research into the town's public records. AETOS has a supply chain, he wrote. Like any facility. Their public filings include service contracts. They use one company for all their non-technical, on-site logistics. A local firm called Seacliff Coastal Logistics. They handle everything from food for the cafeteria to office supplies and janitorial services. A delivery truck from that company goes up to the facility every single morning. A silence fell over the group as the shape of a new, insane plan began to form. It was a classic Trojan horse. It was their only move left. The objective was clear: intercept a Seacliff Coastal Logistics truck, neutralize the driver, and get one of their own inside, disguised in the driver's uniform. That person would have to ride the truck into the AETOS loading bay, find a moment of distraction, and get to a network port. But who would go? Liam had to stay as the comms hub. Arthur was too old. Chloe had medical skills, but not the right profile for this kind of infiltration. It was Kevin, the quiet, terrified student, who spoke up first. His typed words were steady, stripped of his usual panic. I'll do it. The group was stunned. Chloe was the first to object. Kevin, no. It's too dangerous. You're not, she trailed off, not wanting to say strong enough or brave enough. I know what you think I am, Kevin's reply came. The scared kid. And you're right. I've been terrified this whole time. But I watched Ben's status change to concluded. I'm watching Maya get erased by a progress bar. I'm done being scared. I'm done waiting. I need to do something. Let me do this. There was a new strength in his words, a resolve forged in the crucible of their shared horror. He had been broken down and was now building himself back up into something new. Before the debate could go further, Arthur added a final, grim piece of logic. He's the best choice. He's young and unassuming. He's the least likely to draw suspicion if he's seen. He looks like a kid on a summer job. The plan was set. It was reckless. It was desperate. It was almost certainly going to fail. But it was better than sitting in their rooms, watching the walls and their timers close in. Liam gave the final instructions, his heart heavy with the weight of sending another person into the fire. Chloe would help Kevin prepare, using her medical knowledge to assemble a small emergency kit. Arthur would provide the detailed schedule for the logistics company he'd uncovered. Evelyn would guide them remotely, providing a schematic of a typical loading bay's network layout. Liam's final message was to Kevin. Tomorrow morning. You go. We'll be with you every step of the way, on the comms. Be safe. In his motel room, Liam looked at the simple, cheap USB drive he had just finished loading Evelyn's worm onto. It was a tiny piece of plastic and metal, no bigger than his thumb. And inside it, they had placed the entirety of their final, desperate hope. The pre-dawn hours of Wednesday, October 8th, were cold and silent, thick with a tension that felt heavier than the coastal fog. In a rented room on the far side of town, Kevin zipped up a gray work jacket that was 2 sizes too big. The logo for Seacliff Coastal Logistics was stitched over the pocket. It felt like a costume for a play he had never rehearsed. Chloe worked with a quiet, professional focus, checking the contents of a small bag, a bottle of water, a high-energy protein bar, and a single, pre-filled syringe. Her hands were steady. Kevin's were not. "You don't have to do this," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "Yes, I do," Kevin replied, and the simple certainty in his voice surprised them both. The fear was still there, a cold, hard knot in his stomach, but for the first time, it was accompanied by something else, resolve. He was no longer the boy who was running. He was the man who was running toward the fire. Liam was their eye in the sky, a ghost in the network, his laptop screen a mosaic of maps, traffic cameras, and a secure chat window. Arthur was the strategist, providing the final piece of the puzzle. "The driver's name is Dale," he'd reported the night before. "He's worked for the company for 15 years. He makes the AETOS run every morning. And he has one stop. A roadside coffee shack called The Daily Grind, a mile out of town. Every day, 6:15 a.m. Like clockwork. That was their intercept point. At 6 a.m., Chloe and Kevin were parked across the street from the coffee shack. The plan was as simple as it was monstrous. Chloe, wearing a simple rain jacket and a baseball cap, would get in line behind the driver. She'd order 2 coffees, one for her and one for the driver, which she would carefully inject with a powerful sedative as he was paying. A quiet, non-violent solution. At 6:14, the blue Seacliff coastal logistics van pulled into the lot. A heavy-set man in his 50s climbed out and ambled toward the window. It was Dale. Chloe got out of the car, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. From his motel room, Liam watched it all unfold through a grainy public traffic camera. He saw Chloe get in line. He saw her expertly shield the syringe with her body. He saw the moment of the injection, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. Dale took his coffee, gave a friendly nod, and got back in his van. "He's moving," Liam reported in their private voice channel. Kevin, waiting in the car, put his hand on the small, cold USB drive in his pocket. They followed the van at a safe distance. A mile down the winding coastal highway, the van's blinking right turn signal came on. It swerved gently onto the shoulder and rolled to a stop. "It's done," Chloe breathed into her comms. They pulled up behind the van. The next few minutes were a blur of frantic, precise activity. They moved the slumped, unconscious driver from the van to the back of their car, covering him with a blanket. He would wake up in a few hours with a headache and a confusing story, but he would be unharmed. Kevin took a deep breath and climbed into the driver's seat of the van. The seat was still warm. The half-empty coffee cup sat in the holder. The point of no return. "Comms check, Kevin," Liam's voice crackled in his earbud. "I hear you," Kevin replied, his own voice sounding thin and distant. "I'm in." The drive up the private road to the AETOS facility was the longest 10 minutes of Kevin's life. The road was pristine blacktop, winding through a pristine forest that felt more like a corporate park than a wilderness. Around a final bend, the facility came into view. It wasn't a building, it was a monument to secrecy. A collection of low, gray, windowless structures, surrounded by a perimeter fence that hummed with electricity. Cameras on tall poles swiveled with silent, robotic precision. "You're approaching the main gate," Liam's voice said in his ear. "Just hold his ID badge up to the scanner. Don't make eye contact with the camera." Kevin's hand shook as he held the plastic badge up to the glowing panel. There was a soft chime, and a moment later, the heavy steel gate slid open with a near-silent hum. He was inside. He followed the marked signs for deliveries, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The loading bay was a cavernous opening in the side of the main building, a concrete maw that swallowed the van. He pulled to a stop where a painted line on the floor indicated. The bay door rolled shut behind him, plunging the area into the flat, sterile light of industrial lamps. He wasn't alone. 2 armed guards in sleek, gray uniforms stood near the entrance, their faces impassive. A handful of workers in similar jumpsuits were moving pallets. It was a place of cold, quiet efficiency. "Okay, Kev, I'm in," Evelyn's voice suddenly joined the channel, a welcome surprise. "I've piggybacked onto the gate's security handshake. I have a temporary, low-level view of their internal network map. There's a network terminal on the far wall, near the supervisor's station. That's your target." Kevin's eyes scanned the bay. He saw it. A small, glassed-in office, and on the wall just outside it, a data port. He had his target. He climbed out of the van, grabbing a clipboard to look busy. He had to play the part. He walked to the back of the van and began unloading the first few boxes of copy paper, his mind racing. He needed a distraction, a reason to get near that wall. He set a box down, his eyes darting to the terminal. It was so close. just 20 feet away. But standing directly in front of it, tapping on a tablet and observing the workers, was a tall, severe-looking AETOS supervisor. His uniform was a darker shade of gray, his posture rigid, his eyes missing nothing. Kevin froze, his heart sinking. The target was in sight. The package was in his pocket. But his path was blocked by the one thing their plan couldn't account for: a watchful, suspicious man standing directly on the X. The network port was an arm's length away. An eternity away. Kevin stood frozen by the stack of copy paper, the AETOS supervisor a gray, immovable statue between him and his goal. In his ear, he could hear the frantic, whispered brainstorming of his team. "Cause a scene," Arthur suggested. "Tip over a pallet." "Too clumsy," Evelyn countered from her remote location. "He'll be the first person they grab. We need to pull that supervisor away, not push Kevin towards him." Liam listened, his own mind racing. They couldn't create a physical distraction, but he could create a digital one. It was his last, most dangerous card to play as a double agent. A move that would either save them or expose him instantly. He opened his direct message channel with Dr. Thorne. His fingers flew across the keyboard, composing the most high-stakes lie of his life. "Urgent," he typed. "Change of plan. The Miller lead was a distraction. I've just learned their real target. It's the primary comms tower on the south ridge of the property. They're trying to physically disable your connection to the outside world. They're moving on it now." He hit send. It was a lie designed to trigger the highest possible security alert, an attack on AETOS's brainstem. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in the loading bay, the supervisor's tablet chimed with a sharp, insistent electronic tone. The man's severe expression tightened. He read the screen, swore under his breath, and began barking orders into his wrist comm. Without a second glance at the delivery driver, he strode quickly into his office, slamming the door. The path was clear. "Now, Kevin, now!" Liam's voice commanded in his ear. The world seemed to slow down. Kevin grabbed a box, his movements deliberately clumsy. He walked toward the wall, pretending to read the label. He stumbled, letting the box fall with a loud thud, its contents spilling across the floor. In the moment of confusion, as the other workers turned to look, his right hand shot out. The USB drive, slick with sweat, clicked satisfyingly into the network port. A tiny green LED on the drive flashed once. Confirmation. He pulled the drive out in the same motion, scooping it up with the scattered papers. He apologized profusely to the annoyed workers, stacked the box back up, and with a feigned embarrassment, declared he was finished for the day. He walked back to the van, his legs feeling like lead, not daring to run. The drive to the front gate was agonizing. The gate slid open. He drove through, back onto the public road, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, he breathed. He had done it. Back in their scattered rooms, the team watched as a new message from Evelyn appeared. "I'm in," she wrote. "The worm is active. It's working. Oh my God, it's found her. It's found Maya." A wave of triumphant, disbelieving joy washed over the group. They had won. They had breached the fortress. "It's exfiltrating data," Evelyn's next message read. "I'm getting everything. The core code for Chrono, the personnel files, and the master list. All of them. Every past, present, and future cohort. We have it all. We can expose them." They had the proof. They could save Sarah Jenkins. They could save the next 10, the next 100, the next 1,000 people on the ledger. Suddenly, a new connection flickered open, a direct feed established by Evelyn's worm. It was a raw data stream, a direct message from the ghost in the machine. From Maya. Her words were fragmented, a mix of human thought and machine logic. "Not prediction," the text read. "Scheduled events. Control. The accident. The stroke. The fire. They trigger it. Test the model. Prove the accuracy. It's all murder. The final, horrifying truth. AETOS didn't predict death. It caused it, executing its victims in precisely the manner its algorithm predicted, all to prove that its model was perfect. As they stared at this final confession, Liam's phone buzzed with an alert from the Chrono app. A direct message from Dr. Thorne. The tone was no longer angry or demanding. It was calm. It was admiring. "Very clever, Mr. Hudson. The comms tower faint. The delivery van Trojan horse. A truly elegant piece of improvisation. We have, of course, been aware of your little conspiracy since you first messaged probable cause." The words hit Liam like a physical blow. "We allowed the infiltration," Thorne continued. We needed to test our system's response to a coordinated, intelligent, internal insurgency. Your group has provided invaluable data on reaction patterns, deception, and collaboration under extreme duress. For that, we thank you. Your cohort's experiment is now complete. It was all a lie. They hadn't won. They had simply performed their final function in the experiment. Liam's chrono app, which had for weeks displayed the date October 28th, suddenly refreshed. The old date vanished. A new one appeared. October 8th. The current date. His time of death was less than 1 minute away. At the same instant, across their secure chat, the messages flew in. Arthur, my date has changed. Chloe, mine too. Kevin, oh God no. All of them. Their dates had all been recalibrated, synchronized to the same, final, imminent countdown. Thorne's last message appeared on Liam's screen. The final variable is acceptance. Congratulations on a successful conclusion. In his motel room, Liam stared at his phone. The timer was at 47 seconds. He had the proof to save the world, but not enough time to save himself. He looked at the data streaming from Evelyn, the ledger of names, the evidence of the conspiracy. He looked at his own clock, the seconds ticking away. His last act was to send one final, desperate message into the void, a simple plea to the one person who now held the future in her hands. Evelyn, he typed, his fingers racing against the final countdown. Release it. Release it all. 30 seconds.